All right, guys, I'm live. This is the sixth day in a row. This is my sixth episode. I will just quickly post up the links. So give me a second, please. Thank you for joining. If you're joining on Twitter, I encourage everybody to also go to my YouTube. That's where I'm really trying to focus on building some growth. I think we've got a couple watching live already. I encourage people to share it around. Please comment your thoughts. I'm going to basically do a political compass test. I will also talk about the Australian election. I was just streaming just before. I had to restart the stream, just some technical issues. But thank you for joining. Thank you guys. Thank you everybody who's here. I'm happy to debate people. I'm happy to chat politics. Give me a second to just share the link around so that we can have more people join us. I only got like one person on YouTube right now. We're starting to build up a bigger audience. Thank you guys. I had to end my one just prior because unfortunately there were some technical issues. But thank you everybody for joining. Comment if you're watching. Let me know who's watching. Always good to recognize people from the previous couple streams. So as I said previously, this is my sixth stream in a row. I'm trying to stream every day for 100 days in a row. And we've got about 40 people on Twitter right now, 5 people on YouTube. Thank you guys for joining. If you're watching on YouTube, please consider liking and subscribing. Got almost 10 people on YouTube now. Consider liking and subscribing, please. I would very much appreciate it. I'm trying to build up my YouTube right now, putting a lot of effort into it. Much more effort actually than I'm putting into Twitter. The real horizon that we're reaching towards is certainly YouTube. So live streaming the political compass test. I'll start in a second, just posting the link around. But yes, comment if you're watching. Let me know who's watching. It's always good when I recognize people from the last couple streams. This is the sixth one we've done in a row, and it's hard. I've got to say, streaming's harder than I thought. It's very hard because I clowned on Hassan quite a lot when Hassan Piker said, streaming's the hardest job in the world. It's harder than even being a coal miner in a fucking pit. And I laughed a lot when he said that. But to be honest, having now streamed, having now done it 5 days in a row, six one in a row though, it actually is a lot harder. You've got to somehow keep people entertained. Drew, you also got to get on that Instagram game. Yeah, I am on Instagram. My name's just literally Drew Pablo on Instagram. I've got about 35K there. I don't know how many of my followers are real though. I feel like there's a lot of bots following me on Instagram, which is a shame. You should make combos with more established YouTubers to get your numbers up. Yeah, absolutely. Ethan Klein had me on. Destiny had me on. If anybody knows how to get these guys to have me on their show, I'd be very, very grateful. We're trying very hard here. 10 people on YouTube. Thank you guys. Please like and comment. Whole new world of people that follow politics differently and they'd love your humor. I think he's talking about Instagram. I do actually want to get onto Instagram. I do want to do more stuff. It's hard, guys. I'm just one bloke and I don't really have a team behind me, and I'm trying to manage all these different platforms. I've mainly been doing Twitter for a long time now, but YouTube's the place to be. I've even got a TikTok as well. I've got a link tree in my bio. I've actually got a link tree. I've actually got a YouTube. I've got a TikTok. I try not to use it because the Chinese government and stuff like that. I don't want to be that much of a hypocrite. It's hard. But yes. Thank you guys. We're starting to get a better audience. I appreciate everyone who's tuned in. Viet Tran, thank you for tuning in. I think you've tuned into all my previous live streams. Thank you. You're a legend. Now this is going to be me doing the political compass test live, so you can find out where I sit on all these issues. ESEM says if you want some help, I'd be down. Thank you, man. Comment. I don't know how do you have Twitter? If you could have Twitter, maybe just DM me. I'd love to talk to you. You should take the other political compass test. I think it's more accurate. Nah, actually, that is true because this political compass test is kind of bullshit. I think Cunspeeds is talking about Specker. Specker is actually a lot better and there's more questions and stuff. So I'll do Specker test because I think political compass test is biased towards making everybody seem left wing. But again, thank you guys for tuning in. I did clown on Hassan Piker when he said, being a live stream is harder than being a coal miner. I did clown on him. I thought it was a stupid thing to say, but it is actually harder than I thought because I'm, yes, into my 6th live stream now, and it's hard. You've got to keep the people interested. You've got to somehow keep talking for like 7 hours straight. It's a tough one. It's a tough one. So I appreciate anybody commenting because it makes things easier for me when I can just react to things on the screen. You know, we need your help, my friends. We need your help. I appreciate everybody saying that they will help me. Thank you, guys. Okay, listen, the Specker test. The reason I'm doing Specker test is it's more accurate than the other one, which is more famous. The other one that's more famous is kind of like run by these lefties, and they put even Bernie Sanders in like the right-wing column, so they must be like full-blown Stalinists or something like that. So I think it's probably not as accurate as it could be. I'm interested in people's thoughts. Yeah, Hassan Pai. Honestly, just the content nuke or whatever by iDubbbz was literally the cringest shit I've ever seen in my entire life. Literally the cringest shit I've ever seen in my life. And Frogan is actually a creature out of hell. It's horrific. It's horrific, guys. It's really torturous. Okay. Each individual enjoys bodily autonomy and have rights that no other individual or group may violate. I mean, yes, I do believe that people should have, final say over things like, medical decisions, all these things. So I'm going to put agree. That's question 1 out of 100 questions. All fully formed individuals have the freedom to decide what they knowingly and voluntarily consume. Again, I would lean towards yes. That said, I don't agree with like meth consumption and stuff like that. But I still think that people should have the freedom to decide what they voluntarily consume. I don't think it should be forced on people that you have to take these, bleach. I don't agree with torture. I don't agree with these, torture methods of it, forcing things on people. Someone asked, what's your opinion on abortion? Listen, it should just be safe, legal, and rare, right? Obviously, I'm a Christian, and I think it's a sad thing. But at the same time, I don't want women dying on the operating table. And that's what happens in some of these countries that ban abortion. And, there's a lot of cruelty in America. You see cases where there are young women who've been raped or subjected to incest, etc. And people are subjecting themselves to really dangerous, unhealthy, unsafe abortion. So, look, I think at the end of the day, even though I think it's a sad thing, I just want women to be able to have the ability to do it safely, because I don't want people dying due to unsafe medical procedures in backroom operating rooms. And I think that's a very fair position to take, because at the end of the day, I think like the health of the mother really needs to be the number one thing there. I want the woman to be able to, maintain her health, without the risk of, these dodgy back alley abortions where people die. So I don't want that to happen. I never want to see anybody die as a result of a dodgy abortion. And so, my policy certainly, it's a sad thing. We would like it to be rare. And hopefully the way we can do that is, through sex education and better education and stuff like that. At the same time, it really does need to be legal, because when you have a policy where it's criminalized, people will still seek to get abortions, but they'll just do it in a dangerous fashion. They'll consult back alley abortion clinics and stuff like that. People die, and it's actually like sad and horrible as fuck. I think that's fair. I mean, what do people think? I'm interested in their thoughts. All fully formed individuals have the freedom to decide what they knowingly and voluntarily consume. I'm going to say agree, because even though I don't like meth, even though I don't like drugs and all that sort of stuff, at the end of the day, I don't think people should be forced to take any substances. Like, it should always be voluntary. Abortion rates are also going down too. Like these things will naturally decrease when you have greater education in society, all that sort of stuff. Really, the worst thing you can do is, this blunt force instrument where you have, full criminality. Because what happens then? What happens when you have criminality is people still seek abortions, but people die when they try to get them. And I don't want that to happen. Drew Pavlou, who will you vote for? It's a tough one. I really hate the Greens. I've always strongly been against the Liberal Party. I'm against like the various far right parties in Australia. I mean, that kind of leaves the Labor Party, but I have to say I'm very, very disenchanted with them. Because I think they've done a really bad job when it comes to housing. I think they've done a bad job with managing population growth and migration. I just think it's unfortunately been a bit of an incompetent government, and their foreign policy when it comes to China leaves a lot to be desired. So it's a tough one. Unfortunately, in Australian politics, I feel very much kind of just very much like I don't have any side, right? I just feel like I've kind of got really no. I feel like in Australian politics, I'm very much on my own. I don't really know. I don't really feel represented by anybody, to be honest, unfortunately. Somebody say Sustainable Australia Party is for you, then yeah, but look, that's such a minuscule party. And I mean, really, I think Sustainable Australia Party really only seems to focus on population as the only other policy. But for me, obviously, I'm very passionate about foreign policy and all range of matters. So it's tough. I don't think Sustainable Australia is really the party for me, unfortunately. So you're not locking up people who are going through mental health episodes. What do you mean by that easy money? Are you talking about my question when it comes to Specker? So you're politically homeless. Yeah, that's honestly how I feel. Unfortunately, I do definitely feel politically homeless when it comes to Australian politics. And it's a sad thing. I wish that I had a home in Australian politics, but I don't know. There's not really anybody who really has my position, which is kind of like hawkish on foreign policy while socially democratic. Someone says, I do think we're in a rough spot with China. Yeah, look, like my politics where you're hawkish on foreign policy, but your economic policies are sort of center left, moderate left. And then with the views I have on population, I mean, I kind of have a pretty idiosyncratic political position in Australian politics, and I just don't really think it fits with any party in particular, which is a shame. Maybe we need to bring back the Drew Pavlou Democratic Alliance. It's funny, a lot of people clown on me for that. People go, oh, he's such an egotist. He put his name in the party title. I think people don't realize that in Australia, like it's a very, very common thing for people who are running like these independent tickets to just put their name in it. Because the reason you do that is when you're running for the Senate, you basically have to put your name above the line. If you don't put your name in the party title, then you basically lose your best hope of any chance of reaching voters, because otherwise you can be given a completely random name. Otherwise you can be given a name by the AEC like Group X or Group Y or Group Z. The other thing being as well, like, if I had a generic name, like, look at Trumpet of Patriots, for example, like what the fuck does that mean? So, people clown on me for having the Drew Pavlou Democratic Alliance, whatever. Really, it's pretty common practice. There's like been 10 or 15 other parties in Australia who've been founded, who were really founded as sort of like independent ticket runs. But to run as an independent in Australia, you kind of have to put your name in the party title. Otherwise, you basically just don't get enough visibility for voters when it actually gets to the ballot paper. So it's just a quirk of like the Australian ballot paper system, actually. Vietnam just voted in favor of UNA 79L75 on April 16. That includes language condemning Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The US voted against it. That's crazy. Honestly, respect Vietnam for that. It's interesting. Like, Vietnam is technically a communist country, but if you look at it compared to China, it seems to me to be quite a different type of situation. Somebody say, if you move to Scandinavia, we have a bunch of parties like that, social democratic but hawkish on foreign policy. That's funny. I don't know, because like, I guess this is the problem, right? Like, on health and education and economic policies, I kind of align with Labor, but their foreign policy is just like a bit too like weak for me. So I just feel quite underrepresented. And like, for me, I'm very obsessed with foreign policy as like my number one thing. I've got 15 people on YouTube right now. Thank you, guys. If you're watching on YouTube, please consider liking and commenting and subscribing. Just help me reach more people. This is my fifth day of streaming in a row, my sixth stream in a row, and we're trying very hard here. I know you don't like the Greens, but apart from their anti-Israel stance, what you dislike about them? You voted Labor in Queensland. Why is views in the... See, the Greens are also bad when it comes to just the national defense policy of Australia. So at their last sort of, last time I checked, their policy is literally cut Australian defense spending in half to 1% GDP defense spending. As well as that, they want to cut the US Defense Alliance. And so really what they basically advocate for is Australia as like basically a disarmed neutral nation. And I think that's just insane when it comes to the fact that China has massively rearmed. It's like the largest armaments program in history, the largest peacetime military buildup in human history, which is what the Chinese government is doing right now. And the Greens in front of that, the Greens in the face of the largest military buildup in peacetime history by China want us to cut our defense spending in half. And I think that's just insane. So that's where I really strongly disagree with the Greens. What do you think about Molotov-Ribbentrop? I think it's very interesting that Soviet Union literally begun World War II allied with Nazi Germany. It's a sick thing, and tankies should be used to bash tankies over the head forever for all of human history. The fact that Soviet Union allied with the Nazis to invade Poland. Are you pro union, Drew? Yeah, within reason. I support the workers' right to form an independent trade union and bargain for a better condition. better conditions. That said, obviously, you have the more militant socialist unions. I don't agree with the more militant ones. I favor an approach where, unions can hopefully work with employers towards, building a society, a social democratic system based on consensus. I don't like the militant sort of socialist stuff. I was reading Denmark's immigration policies, and even though I knew they were pretty heavy on it, I was still pretty shocked, Lol. Interesting. Tell me what made you, tell me what you thought was really shocking about the Danish immigration policies. What is your response to Tankies who say that Molotov Pact was to stall the Nazis in order to rearm? I think that's completely bullshit, right? Because if you're stalling the Nazis, why would you destroy the independent buffer nation that exists between you and Nazi Germany, right? So Poland existed as a buffer state between the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany, and the Soviets, apparently wanting to just simply stall the Nazis in order to rearm, decide, oh yeah, let's destroy the buffer state between us and literally bring the Soviet border right up to the Nazi border. I mean, that's just bullshit, right? Like that stuff is just that's such a lie by the Tankies. Someone says, long live Cyprus. Amen, my friend, amen. I've only been to Cyprus one time. I went for like 2 weeks when I was 12 years old, and it was really fun. I love Cyprus. I'm proud of the fact that, my family comes from there. But look, at the end of the day, I'm fully Australian. What social democratic policies do you support? Listen, I favor government spending on education, on universities, on public healthcare, all that sort of stuff. I want a society where, you have state capacity, where the state can intervene in the economy to, try and lift up the condition of the poorest in society. I want that within still the framework of market economics, because I support free markets overall. Someone says, NASCAR, I don't like the Greens, but I vote for them only because it weakens the Uni Party, and I'd later be able to vote for a different minor party as they'd have a better chance against the Greens. I don't really think it weakens the Uni Party. I don't see how it weakens the Uni Party. I mean, the Greens are just, I don't know, the Greens, I don't know what attracts you to the Greens. It's, for me, foreign politics being so important to me, the Greens support a really horrible foreign policy stance where they want Australia to basically be a disarmed neutral country, and if China invades Taiwan, they want us to just literally do nothing, and that's horrible to me. Is it fair to say that both Red Army and Nazi Germany are evil, but Nazi Germany is the greater evil? Of course, Nazi Germany is literally the worst dictatorship in human history. That's purely because if they had accomplished their end goals, it would have basically resulted in the annihilation of more than 1 billion people. They basically just wanted to kill. Eventually, if they had their way, if they had really achieved world domination, they would have just exterminated probably almost all non-whites, right? So I just think Nazi Germany is the most evil thing in human history. That said, though, Stalinism is profoundly, supremely evil. Stalinism is, again, one of the most evil systems to ever be created by humanity. The Soviet Union was an evil state. And the Soviet Union was absolutely morally disgusting. Does Australia have universal healthcare? Yeah, we actually do have universal healthcare. And that's my experience that, growing up with universal healthcare, it just doesn't compute for me how people in America, have to face the fact that, if they get hit by a car one day, they can just be bankrupted. I think that's just a really cruel and horrible system. Libertarians are stupid to put them last since they can't beat the major parties. The libertarians are stupid in Australia. The libertarians in Australia are pro-Russia as well. And so for me, that's just absolutely disgraceful. Could never, ever, ever support them. I just have a feeling the Greens will change their military policy later on. No, man, they're not going to, because at the core of the Greens' outlook on the world is that they think Australia is bad. They think Australia is a terrible country because Australia is founded on oppression and white people and all this bad stuff. I honestly think there's just this massive self-hatred element to the Greens. And as a result, they're never going to change their military policy. They there are segments of the Australian far left who have literally argued in the past. For example, there's a guy called Guy Rundle, who's a famous socialist writer in Melbourne, who literally argued that it would be immoral for Australia to defend itself from a Chinese invasion because Australia was founded on colonialism. That's literally the socialist argument that some people in the far left in Australia have. And I honestly think the Greens would never say that outright, but I honestly think that's the kind of attitude that lurks at the heart of the Greens thinking when it comes to foreign policy and defense. I honestly reckon that deep down the Greens are we shouldn't defend Australia because it's it shouldn't have even existed as a country. I honestly think that's the kind of neurosis that exists right at the deep core of Australian Greens ideology, which is sad. It's a self-hatred. And I think self-hatred is just a form of mental illness. Lil Hammer, pretty ironic that Nazi Germany claimed they were fighting for a white world and then occupied and terrified Norway and Denmark. Yeah, it's funny, right? Like all these like gropers and all these fucking idiot white nationalists who support Nazism. The Nazis probably killed more white people in all human history, you know? Like it's just literally a mentally ill psycho ideology. And their idea is basically any white person who doesn't agree with us has to be killed. And then the outcome is that these guys who basically proclaim themselves the defenders of Aryan humanity, blah, 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 end up just mass murdering like millions and millions and millions of white people. And then like you ask them, how is this supposed to help white people? And then they're like, huh? That's like fucking Nazi ideology at the end of the day, right? Just fucking mass murder like 10 million white Europeans. That's Nazi ideology. So I can't believe like, you know, we still have these retarded white nationalists who reckon, you know, these are the saviors of whiteness, blah, blah. People expected you to be an anti-woke right-wing Captain Dreamer-esque bigot after your China demonstration. Good that you rose above that. That's funny that anybody ever thought that of me, because even from the start, when I was a protester against the Chinese government, it was always on the basis that I was opposed to the Chinese government's human rights policies. It was never based on like race or anything like that. And you know, I'm very much against like the captive dreamers of the world. I'm very much against like the chuds. Like I do have like anti-woke opinions. You know, like I don't like you know white people's self-hatred. I don't like you know people having to whip themselves over history and stuff like that. Like I don't like a lot of the excesses when it comes to like, you know, far left woke ideology. But at the end of the day, like I just fucking hate these psychos that are like trying to put normal people in gulags and stuff like that. Like, you know, that's actually the outcome of Trumpism and stuff like that. Someone says Blair Cottrell has autism. From what I was told, I wouldn't take them seriously. The National Social Network guys, those guys are genuinely scary though. Like I seriously reckon they have it in them to be like extremely violent and eventually kill people. Okay, genuine question. In your views about necessary confrontation with Russia, China, how do you think about the possibility of nuclear exchanges? See, I don't actually want war with Russia and China. My idea is that these dictatorships are pushing hard against the West. They're trying to use nuclear blackmail to make us capitulate and make all these concessions to them. And my whole idea, right, is that we just need to be hard. We have to make sure that we contain these dictatorships. So my policy is basically a policy of containment, right? Sorry, guys. I've got 3 dogs on me. I'm dog sitting at the moment. Yeah, my policy is literally a policy of containment. I don't want war. I seriously do not want war. I don't want nuclear exchanges because I'm not fucking insane. My policy is just contain these dictatorships, wait them out, wait for these dictatorships to collapse. And like the way you make these dictatorships collapse is you have to put economic pressure on them. You have to stop trading with them. So that's my idea of confrontation with China and Russia. My idea is I certainly don't want warfare. I don't want actual outright war between nuclear powers because that's insane. And war obviously always results in massive horrendous tragedies. I don't want war. I'm scared that if we keep on capitulating to these dictatorships, then the prospect of war becomes more likely. So my whole idea, right, is we try and forestall my whole idea is we try and stop war from happening. We try and forestall the possibility of war by trying to lay down red markers in the sand and just tell these dictatorships, no further. We're not going to accept you pushing, which is what Russia's been doing in Eastern Europe for the past 10 years. Vietnam, bruh, seeing Polish and Slavic neo-Nazis is the funniest thing ever. Didn't the mustache guy write about wiping them and their culture out? Yeah, absolutely insane, right? You know, this is one of the most retarded things about Joel Davis and the National Socialist Network in Australia. So Joel Davis has gone to Poland before, linked up with like neo-Nazis in Poland. He's got this big thing where he admires Polish white nationalists and all that sort of stuff. But simultaneously, he's an outright full Hitler supporter. And it's like, dude, the Nazis believed that the Polish people were like subhuman. They carried out the most horrendous atrocities possible against the Polish people. Like these guys are sick. Like, you know, Joel Davis, he was marching with the Polish white nationalists. And then simultaneously he supports Hitler, who killed 6 million Polish people. So, you know, these guys are just schizophrenic and they're evil as, like, seriously. Your Jeffrey Martin impression is hilarious. It's very funny because I like to call him Jeffrey Martin and give a sort of Hispanic inflection at the end. It's just very funny that way, especially because his lisps kind of sounds Spanish. So when you're listening to Captive Dreamer talk, he kind of sounds like a gay Spanish guy. Like he speaks like, welcome to Barcelona, you know, that sort of thing. So I like to say Jeffrey Martin. It's Martin, but I like to, you know, add the Hispanic inflection Martin to Jeffrey's name. Thoughts on parties like AFD? Seem they adopt your immigration stance, but are very scary people otherwise. See, I hate them because they're Nazis, right? Like I think in German politics, honestly, the best party right now is the CDU. It's a shame because I think the CDU has formed the grand coalition with the Social Democrats. The Social Democrats, I supported them when they were at the last election, but they objectively did a really terrible job when it came to Ukraine, when it came to stuff like migration. I think the problem is that the CDU, in forming a grand coalition with the SPD, is going to water down their policies regarding migration, etc. But the CDU had made signals prior to the election that they're going to take a tougher policy on migration. And I think that's ultimately what Germany and a lot of European countries need to try and stop the far right from rising to power. So I just take a very pragmatic opinion. My whole stance is basically like, okay, if you have open border policies and it leads to people like Trump and the AfD, I don't want those people in because they're pro-Russia, they're pro-dictatorship. They have all these evil opinions aside from migration that I don't want them in. Therefore, as a liberal person, my sense is like just control the border, have a reasonable migration policy. Therefore, you forestall the rise of the far right. So that's why I'm against the AfD. They're pro-Russia. They've got really evil opinions on German history. They've got a wing of that party that literally is blatantly neo-Nazi. And so that's why I'm against the AfD. I think my hope is that the CDU will have a more reasonable migration policy. And I'm hoping that the CDU will do well in government so that they can try to keep the AfD out of power. Will you do a different debate with a new neo-Nazi scum? I've debated actually some of them before. I debated Joel Davis, which was pretty psycho. I debated him in person, and he was a pretty schizo guy in real life. I honestly reckon, just seeing him in real life, you looked at him, I honestly reckon he has it within him to kill people. It's pretty fucked up. It's pretty messed up. I saw his eyes, and he had pretty crazy eyes, guys. So that was a pretty confronting experience actually debating these guys in real life. What is Mr. Pavlu's position on the eternal UK Labour divide, Ernie Bevan versus Nye Bevan? Look, unfortunately, I actually can't answer that question. Unfortunately, I'm not well-versed enough. Maybe you can explain that a bit more to me. I'm interested. I am interested in British politics. I'm interested in, figures like Clement Attlee and illustrious figures in British Labour Party history, etc. But unfortunately, I'm drawing a blank on that one, guys. I'm a bit tired today. Does Joel Davis have autism? I don't know, man. I don't know. Brilliant point, Drew. Thank you, Flyby. I'm not sure what point exactly, but I appreciate it. Thank you. I should get back to the political compass. Who do you support in Britain? That's a tough one, right? Because prior to the election, I thought Tories had done such a shit job, just such an objectively shit job over 14 years. I thought, give Labour a chance, give Keir Starmer a chance. I thought Keir Starmer would be a lot better than he has been because I thought, well, he's purged the party of Jeremy Corbyn. I thought he'd do a lot better in government. But it's very hard because in government, he's been really out of touch. He's just been a really bad disaster in government. And it's sad. I agree with his Ukraine stuff, but I think he's got a really dumb and bad attitude when it comes to Islamism. He just doesn't take it seriously enough that there are really bad problems when it comes to jihadism in the UK and stuff like that. And that is obviously making the government really unpopular. And I think they just need to be pragmatic and just be serious about the fact that, yeah, there are actually jihadi extremists in Britain and you have to have a plan for actually trying to deport some of the most ardent extremists. I think that's pretty obvious, right? Because you just need to have a way to maintain social cohesion. So I actually don't know I don't know who I would support in Britain. It's really hard. It's a bad state right now in Britain. I think, unfortunately, Britain's in a really bad state. You saw Joel Davis chimping out today, right? Hilarious shit, really embarrassing for them. That's funny. Actually, let me try to get that up really, really quickly. I saw that and it was actually really, they looked really retarded. Hang on, where is that? I'm going to quickly find, hang on. So I'm going to share screen. I'll get up the video from today. Guys, watch this. It's actually really extremely retarded. Okay, this is pretty funny.
Why do you go in black?
Tell me, can you guys hear this? Please let me know if you can hear this.
Think that we are going to beat these fucking Jews without being militants?
Fuck, man. So schizo. These guys are so...
Why do you go in black shirts? You look so militant. Yes! We are fucking militants! Do you think that we are going to beat these fucking Jews without being militants?
What fucking retarded cunts, seriously. It's just so retarded. Everybody looks at that and thinks these guys are fucking freaks. That's just the reality. Everybody looks at that and they're just like, who are these fucking scary freaks? Get them the fuck away from Australian politics. That's literally what the average person on the street thinks. Literally take a straw poll. Yeah, that guy's literally, he's Australia's foremost neo-Nazi. In Brisbane, they had this retarded thing where they were marching through Brisbane, and they were marching through the center of the marching through the center of the Brisbane CBD, and they were just screaming like "white man, white man, white man," and they just sounded autistic as fuck. And they were just like, and just people were just like looking at them and just thinking like these guys are freaks. So honestly, like these guys are so fucking retarded. It's just actually fucking a joke. I don't know. It's actually so unbelievably retarded. Just their political strategy is like they go out into like the city center and then they just scream like white man, white man, white man, like just like fully autistically. And it's like they think that like that's gonna like fucking win them adherence. I don't know. Can somebody can somebody watching try find the video of them? I think it might have been in like Ballarat or Victoria, where they were like marching down the street and they were just marching and like they were just screaming like white man, like just full caveman autism. Like, can somebody find that, please? And I'll put it up on the stream. It's just actually so fucking funny. Do you think Nazis should be banned from Australia, or do they get free speech? I actually think if you're a communist, if you're a Nazi, if you're a jihadist, you shouldn't have free speech. I think if your group wants to ultimately overthrow democracy, if your group ultimately wants to destroy the democratic foundations of society, then your group should be banned. That's actually my stance. It's based on Karl Popper's paradox of tolerance. And it should apply as well to communists. It should apply to people like purple pingers, like these hardcore socialists who crave like, you know, class war, race killing. Like if you just want to kill people in society, whether you're a communist who wants class war or you're a fascist Nazi who wants race war, if your ideology is all about killing people and murdering people, then I honestly think you should be like banned. You should be shut down by the state. That's my honest opinion. Mr. Bevan was the grand foreign policy hawk of the Labour right who was anti-Semitic, as opposed to Mr. Bevan, the architect of Mr. Attlee's policies of industry, nationalisation, and the NHS. No, I actually had the name rung a bell now that you mentioned the NHS, of course. It's a shame that he was anti-Semitic because, you know, I am a foreign policy hawk. It's a shame he was anti-Semitic. I'm certainly against anti-Semitism. Look, I actually think Clement Attlee was a pretty good British Prime Minister. I think he was a really good British Prime Minister. And yeah, like I actually think, I think Attlee did a really good job with the NHS and all that sort of stuff. Caveman policy, exactly. How do you think Israel can regain support with younger people? Oh man, that's a really, 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 really hard one. That's a really hard one because it's just like massive propaganda online. And also, like, look, I have to be honest as well, like just Ben-Gvir and Netanyahu and stuff like that, like some of like the most prominent figures in Israeli politics, like they are genuinely really far right. And obviously that's just going to be like, that's just always going to be used, obviously, against Israel. It's a very hard thing, guys. It's a very hard thing. Like, I certainly want to see somebody pushing back against the horrible anti-Semitism and the psycho-genocidal anti-Zionist movements and stuff like that. It's really, really hard because, like, the current government of Israel is not exactly, you know, a government that's going to endear itself to young people. And I don't know. I wish that maybe if we just educated people on just how genocidal Hamas really is, like, I often when I get into debates with people like this, like I often ask them, like, are you aware that Hamas was planning it? Like, are you aware that Hamas had a conference I often ask them, are you aware that Hamas held a conference in Gaza in 2021 called the Promise of the Hereafter Conference? And essentially the conference was literally their plan for what they were going to do once they destroyed Israel. And they were talking about how they were going to like ethnically cleanse millions of Jews, and then they're going to keep some of the educated ones as literal slaves. Like we're talking engineers, doctors. They literally were straight up talking about keeping educated Jews as slaves in the future Palestinian ethno-state. That was Hamas, their conference in 2021, talking about what they would do following the destruction of Israel. I often bring that up to people. I'm like, are you aware that they actually did that? And nobody is aware that they did that. And very, very extremely rarely, right? Like when I get into debates with people, like, I bring up the fact that right after October 7, like Haniyeh was on television saying that he wanted to see the blood of grandmothers and children and mothers to try and awaken within the Palestinian people a militant resolve. And it's like, I often just ask people, like, are you aware that like one of the leaders of Hamas literally went on national television right after October 7 and said, like, we want to see grandmothers killed and kids killed because it will like help us fight harder. Like that's a psychotic, insane mindset, right? And people aren't aware of just how insane it is. And so I often try to bring that up in debates with young people, etc. And they're often surprised because they often don't actually know about that part. And look, I think if people knew just how fanatical and insane the ideology of Hamas was, it would make sense why there's currently a war. But it's very hard because I think it's just a long-term problem where like nobody in the West can actually accept that people can have a mindset that's different to their own. So we were all brought up in, Western secular society, very rationalized, secular, etc. So we just can't compute the fact that like Hamas literally believes in like a religious apocalyptic race war against Jews, and they think that like they're divinely inspired to clear all Jews from Palestine because that's what they believe God wants. And like that's a mindset that's like absolutely alien to just like a random lefty gay uni kid. Like, of course, they're not going to understand it. They're just going to pretend it doesn't exist. Because if you just go to like, the average person at like the Gays for Gaza rally, and you're like, hey, are you aware that Hamas believes in a religiously inspired apocalyptic race war to kill all Jews or at least ethnically cleanse them from the Holy Land? Like, they just don't actually. It's just not going to compute for them. It's just not going to compute. So look, I think a big part of it is you have to educate people. But look, I've tried to educate people for so long, and what the fuck can you do? Some people this is the hard part, right? Like, how do you change people's minds? Sometimes I don't even fucking know, because like I will write constantly. I'll write these blogs. I'll write essays. I do my live streams. I'm constantly posting on Twitter. I'm constantly making YouTube videos, and then like you often wonder like to what extent are you just like literally shouting into the void? It's very hard. Like I don't know. Sometimes you can have an impact. I think my stuff on China in Australian politics had, some level of impact because it did sort of change the conversation a bit about like, Chinese Communist Party influence in Australian universities and stuff like that. But that said though, like, I've been going for years and years and years. And, some of these issues, it's just so hard to change people's minds on. Why do you think Xi Jinping loves the CCP if they caused his sister to kill herself? That's such a good question. I'm not sure that's again, another, people don't even know that in the West. People don't even realize that like, the Chinese Communist Party, the Red Guards, tortured Xi Jinping and his family so brutally during the Cultural Revolution. Yet his response was to become redder than red and work his way up the Communist Party ladder. His response to being tortured by the Communist Party and having his sister driven to suicide, having his father tortured by the Communist Party, his response was to try and be more communist than anybody else. That's an insane mindset, right? It's so foreign and alien to us in the West because we can't understand that type of thinking. And it's really the thinking of like, I don't know, like a gangster. It's the thinking of like a fucking warlord. And it's just so strange and alien to us in like a Western liberal democratic society. And again, that's just the problem over and over again. Like, how do you get people to understand that like these people genuinely think so differently? They have an entirely different ideology and worldview, and it's a real thing. They don't just think, they don't have the same values as like your average 18-year-old uni student at the University of Queensland. Like, that's just a fact. People see Palestinian babies and have emotional reactions. It's a pretty difficult situation. Look, it is a horrific thing, and I mourn the death of any innocent civilian. It's horrible. I ultimately believe that Hamas has used the Palestinian civilians as human hostages. They've brought so much suffering onto the people of Gaza, and so I blame a lot of the moral responsibility on Hamas. And I think that's something that very few people are willing to agree with me on when it comes to when it comes to questions of moral culpability, etc. I had a debate the other day with History Speaks, and I said, listen, like, I think what has happened to the civilians is just so horrible. And at the same time, I think, unfortunately, Hamas bears the majority of the responsibility for that because they started the war and they continued the war after 16, 18 months. And they just, at every single step of the way, they keep on trying to, escalate things. And he was so upset when I said that. He said that he couldn't compute. He just thought I had a crazy worldview because I thought Hamas bore the moral responsibility. Barry reckons I'm a hero. Thank you, mate. Drew, can you cover the story of Israeli civilians going on guided tours of IDF torture camps? It sounds like fucking propaganda to me. This sounds like Hamas agitprop to me. I enjoyed your video on MAGA Maoism. Very interesting. Thank you, guys. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing to my YouTube channel. Consider sharing it around. If you guys can help me try share it onto like places like Reddit and stuff so more people see it, that would be great help. We put a lot of effort into that video. What do you think of the claim that Hamas and Likud work together to undermine peace? The sad thing is I think there are extremists on both sides who are very much committed to sort of just like endless warfare. And, Hamas brought Netanyahu to power in the first place back in the late 90s when their response to the Oslo peace process, was to actually bomb, carry out these suicide bombing attacks in Israel. And like, that's what Hamas did. Hamas helped bring Netanyahu to power because their response to the Israeli left initiating peace talks was to try sabotage the peace talks with suicide bombings. Drew doing genocide denial. That's why you have 20 viewers. So cringe. Like, I'm so sorry. Like, these people are so fucking exhausting at this point. Like, it's just this ideological fixation and obsession. They think Hamas bears absolutely no responsibility for starting a war and just perpetually trying to keep the war going at all opportunities. Like I'm sorry, but like you just obviously don't care about Palestinian civilians. If you don't blame Hamas for what's happening, you don't care about Palestinian civilians. It's just a fact. On the topic of your MAGA Maoism video, could you elaborate on the economic policies of Peron? That's a good question, and I actually want to read a book on Peron, and I want to research that a bit because Trump really does have the same sort of like attitude to trade, the same attitude when it comes to import substitution. It's a little bit different because like Peron was very pro-unionist and pro sort of like he had like leftist elements, despite the fact that he was overall kind of a right-wing figure. But there are a lot of things that are similar. Like the personality cult around Peron is similar to the personality cult around Trump. The weird beliefs around trade and import substitution, and the idea that you can just have autarky, and Argentina can create everything it needs, and same with America. That's the part where Trump and Peron have some similarities. Is the authoritarian turn in the EU example regarding recent events in France, Romania, Estonia concerning to you? I think that's just like overblown and bullshit. So I think the problem with Le Pen is that she literally did do illegal things. They basically, stole millions of dollars effectively. In Estonia, which you're talking about, we're talking about people who have had decades to obtain Estonian citizenship and have refused to take Estonian citizenship, and they have Russian citizenship. Like, I can't understand what country would allow non-citizens to vote. That's just crazy. And Romania, I don't understand why you should allow. I don't understand why Romania is forced to allow Russia to basically elect its president. Like, that's bullshit to me. If Russia has been conclusively shown to have manipulated the election with all these fake bot accounts, then how can you just allow Russia to just control your elections like that? Like, what country, any country with self-respect and dignity would try to stop that from happening. Stop that from happening. A lot of people in Gaza are really mad about 1948. How do you resolve this? This is the problem, right? Like you can't reverse the establishment of Israel. And the people who are ideologically committed to the destruction of the state of Israel after almost 80 years of Israel's existence, they're just insane people. And it would involve ethnically cleansing millions of Jewish people. It would be like a second Holocaust. It would be insane. And so that is one of the biggest roots of the current conflict, just this long-term Arab rejectionism. And it's a big shame because the only way you get peace is if you accept that Israel exists and that it has a right to exist and that it's a legitimate country. Still, they think that, one of the biggest problems that has, haunted the conflict for decades now is that all these people drunk their own Kool-Aid. So, for example, the Nasrallah spiderweb theory. Nasrallah put forward this theory where he basically argued that Israel was just a cipher. Israel had all these weapons, it had nukes, but really Israel was actually deep down so weak because it had gay people and it was decadent and it was a Western liberal society and they don't have real blood ties to the land. Like, this is their retarded theory, right? And so their idea has always been just push one last time, one more October 7, one more massacre, one more terrorist attack. And eventually the perfidious Yahud will flee back to their homes in Brooklyn, which is literally like what Frogan basically said on a live stream. And that's why the conflict continues, because it's fundamentally a retarded way of looking at the world, because ultimately the Israeli Jews believe it's their country. They have a genuine connection to the country and the land. And however much you may contest it, Israel exists and Zionism is a genuine nationalist force. It exists in the world. And they think that they can just basically disintegrate this movement. They think that Zionism will just dissolve itself overnight if they just attack one more time hard enough. And I think a lot of these people after October 7, literally believe that, Netanyahu would just sign an order dissolving Israel. And that's not how it works, because there are millions of people in Israel who have no other citizenship, nowhere else to go. And they believe that attempts to destroy Israel are an attempt to exterminate them, and they're going to fight back. So that is unfortunately at the root of a lot of this conflict, this retarded theory of, the spiderweb theory, the idea that, the Israelis aren't real, Israel's not a real country, they don't have a real nationalist movement, etc. That's a huge problem in the Palestinian anti-Zionist movement. The smarter anti-Zionist Palestinian thinkers acknowledge and respect the fact that Zionism actually exists as a nationalist movement. And so they're the ones who say, okay, we just need a two-state solution. But unfortunately, the rejectionism is still very powerful. And there's still so many people who seem to think that oh, Israel's a fake country, and if you just do one more attack, it'll dissolve itself. And that's never going to happen. It's just been a recipe for just constant warfare. And every time they start these wars, they lose. And that's a big problem. And I want the wars to stop. I would prefer, if I could magically do it, I'd prefer a peaceful 2-state solution. Will US and China engage in robot wars in the future? Look, it's interesting. Ukraine, I was talking to infantrymen in Ukraine when I was there 6 weeks ago, and these guys were basically saying it's a drone war now. They were basically saying the majority of the conflict is being decided by drones. So I think that's the future of warfare. It's going to be very interesting. What do you think of Qatargate in Israel? Did Netanyahu take Qatari money? Look, I'm not exactly well versed in it, but I know that I know the central theory is that for a long time, and this is a fact, Netanyahu allowed Qatar to send money to Hamas. He allowed that to happen because he thought that Hamas was weak. He thought that he underestimated Hamas. He basically thought Netanyahu thought that Hamas had been pacified, and he thought that by allowing Qatar to fund them, he could keep them pacified, and he could just freeze the conflict forever and make it harder for the PA, because he wanted to play off Hamas against the PA to try and make sure that there was never any 2-state solution. And that obviously was a massive strategic disaster. And so Netanyahu bears a lot of blame and a lot of moral responsibility for destroying Israel's security situation. It's a really sad thing. Okay, guys, I'm going to go back to my Specker political compass test. Okay. So slavery can be an acceptable practice in certain circumstances, such as punishment for crime. Absolutely opposed. Definitely against slavery. Freedom of expression should be unhindered by law, regardless of the content or context. I think it shouldn't extend to people inciting violence. So I'm going to say disagree. I do think overall that freedom of expression should be unhindered, but when we're talking about people calling for violence or inciting violence, that's where the line should be drawn. Some forms of expression are offensive, such as hate speech, and therefore should be banned. Look, it's hard because I think to some extent you can't ever really legally ban hate speech because it just doesn't really seem to work in society. So I'm just going to put neutral on that. Political authorities need to control communication to prevent the spread of ideas that threaten society. No, I think political communication should be, free for the citizenry. So I'm going to say disagree. Provision of the internet should be monopolized by political authorities and made available free of charge. I don't think it should be monopolized by political authorities because that's almost like, Chinese systems. So I'm going to say oppose. What a cabbage show, you're against free speech. No, I'm not against free speech. I'm just against people who are inciting violence. I'm saying that's the line. The line for me when it comes to free speech is someone explicitly inciting violence, right? Saying that people should be killed based on the basis of race, that sort of thing. People should be free to engage or abstain from religious activities that do not violate the rights of others. Yes, support. Blasphemy laws should be brought back or strengthened to protect religion from its enemies. Nope. I do not want Sharia law blasphemy laws in Britain or Australia. Okay, I'm going to go back and I'm going to change my free speech answer because some people are saying it was unclear. Okay, so I'm going to say freedom of expression should be unhindered by law regardless of the content or context. I'm going to say agree, but I just want to note here for the viewers that I think that doesn't extend to inciting violence and calling for violence against people, but I'm going to put agree here. Okay. Some forms of expression are offensive, such as hate speech, and therefore should be banned. If we're talking about criminal penalties for saying something racist, I don't think criminal penalties are the answer, so I'm going to say neutral. Okay, going back to where I was. The law should neither favor nor aggress against any particular religion, culture, or creed. Yeah, I agree. I don't think the law should favor religion or specific creeds. In the interest of equality, religious organizations should not be exempt from paying their fair share. Look, just as a principle, I'm like, sure. Like, do I think Scientology should pay taxes? Yes, I do. It is valid to say that if you have nothing to fear, then you should have nothing to hide. The freedom of expression seems to be alluding about gay pride parades and stuff like that. Look, you're not going to find me at a gay pride parade because that's not my cup of tea, but I don't believe in going Captain Dreamer style banning these things. So yeah, I'm not like Putinist. So look, I do generally support freedom of expression. It is valid to say that if you have nothing to fear, then you should have nothing to hide. I don't know. I know that's with relation to anti-terrorism laws, and I think most of the anti-terrorism laws really are just genuinely dealing with proper terrorist groups in society, like Islamic extremists, etc. So I'm going to say agree. Do you have any criticism of Israel? Yes, I've criticized the state of Israel many times. I've criticized the state of Israel's support for Azerbaijan. They're militarily armed. The fact that they've militarily armed Azerbaijan to attack Armenia, I think, was horrific. I also think that they've had too many civilian casualties in Gaza. I think the current government of Israel, like Netanyahu and Ben Gvir, these people are bad people. So yeah. Transparency is vital to ensuring the accountability of institutions, political or otherwise. Absolutely support. The surveillance powers of political authority should be expanded to combat terrorism and other threats. Neutral, because I think probably like the current powers that the government has to combat terrorism are probably okay. So I'm just going to say neutral. People should be secure in their persons, home, property, and communications. Support, absolutely. Solve crimes. The police need the power to conduct their affairs without consent or a warrant. No, I think police need warrants. Sexual orientation, preference, or gender should not have an impact on the treatment of individuals by the law. I agree. I don't think people should be discriminated against based on sexual orientation. The freedom of speech part, you should check paradox of tolerance proposed by philosopher Karl Popper. Yeah, dude, I'm a massive supporter of the paradox of tolerance. So I said earlier in the podcast, that I think I'm a supporter of the paradox of tolerance. I think groups like Nazis, communists, and jihadists, the people who are openly plotting violence, openly plotting attempts to overthrow the government, those groups should be banned. Look, I definitely don't support Trump's approach. I think Trump's stuff with Gaza was insane when he was talking about like ethnic cleansing. I don't like that. I hate that. Biden made a lot of mistakes. I think he was like dumb, for example, to try pressure Israel not to attack Hezbollah, because attacking Hezbollah seems to have brought Israel a lot of security. So on that ground, I think it was justified. On stuff like, for example, how Biden forced Israel to allow food into Gaza, I think that was the right thing. So I think overall Biden's strategy was mostly good on the conflict. That said, I think there's some room for criticism, like, for example, how he tried to pressure Israel not to attack Hezbollah, because I think ultimately the conflict against Hezbollah, it was able to secure, peace for the citizens of northern Israel, and that's pretty fair enough, because Nasrallah basically spent a whole year boasting that he had ethnically cleansed Israel of 100,000 Jews who would never be allowed to go back to their homes, and that just could not ever be accepted. Political authorities should have the power to define, license, or restrict personal relationships. See, this is one where like immediately I'd kind of think like no, but I think what it's really asking is like, should political authorities be allowed to just like register marriages? Should political authorities be allowed to like ban incest and stuff like that? And if you're asking me that question, then yes, I think political authorities should be able to do that. So I'm going to say agree. Consenting adults should be free to choose their own sexual practices and personal relationships, as long as they're not harming another person, as long as there's no, abuse, then I think yes. Like, again, I'm a straight bloke. It's not my cup of tea to be, doing gay sex. So it's not my cup of tea. But I don't believe in the Russia Putin bashing people because of their sexual orientation. It's psycho. Like, someone said, so you support incest? No, I was saying I support the government's right to ban incest. That's why I said that the government should be allowed to license and restrict relationships. Isn't that clear? I don't understand. Like, I'm sure like my position's clear, right? I don't know. Like, let me go back to that question, right? Political authorities should have the power to define, license, or restrict personal relationships. When I read that, my thinking is, okay, what is that question asking? It's basically asking, should political authorities be allowed to register marriages? Yes, I think so. Should political authorities be allowed to define, license, and restrict some personal relationships, like, for example, incest? Yes, I think so. So that's why I say agree. I think that's fair. Access to abortion should be regulated by law to reduce or eliminate the practice. Listen, I don't believe in banning abortion because women can die taking these unsafe procedures, so I say disagree. The scope of criminal laws should be limited to the violation of the rights of others through force or fraud. I'm not sure. I mean, that's actually... Was Fukuyama wrong to say he was wrong about the end of history? I don't think Fukuyama was ever wrong, because he put at the end of his book, he explicitly acknowledged that there's a strong chance that history can be restarted by people who literally just get bored. And he put that in his book, and I think he was absolutely right by that. Doesn't that contradict the answer to your last question? Yes, but I did say that consenting adults, like, it should be within reason. Like, I don't think that should extend to like incest and stuff. I think that's fair. I think it's fair. Like, I think these questions are asking absolutes, and like, I'm trying here to answer with regards to real world problems. The scope of criminal law should be limited to the violation of the rights of others through force or fraud. I mean, but that would mean though, like that theoretically somebody could then, if you were saying that it was only about the rights of others, other human beings, could that allow you to then, I don't know, like commit treason against the state? Could it allow you to, dump toxic sludge into a river? I don't know. I guess you could say that violates the rights of others. I'm not sure. That's tough. I mean, what do you guys think? The scope of criminal law should be limited to the violation of the rights of others through force or fraud. I'm interested. What do you guys think? I mean, I guess it sounds like a good principle, so I would say yes. It is valid to say that when there is no victim, then no crime has been committed. I guess that really like an example of that is like if you run a red light at like 3 a.m. and there's no one around. I mean, fair enough. I think probably true. If there's no victim, probably no crime. So I'm going to say agree. If you guys think I've got that really wrong, another example of drug. That's hard though, because like, listen, on a personal level, I'm pretty against look, on a personal level, I really don't like drug use. And like, I don't want to see people destroy their lives with like meth use and stuff like that. So it's a tough one. It's a really tough one. Like, I don't know. For example, I don't support decriminalizing all these drugs. I don't support that because you're right. It does lead to a breakdown of social cohesion a lot. And like social cohesion is a very important thing for me. So look, actually, I will say disagree because I think the state does have an interest in just banning really hard drugs that can lead to a breakdown of social cohesion. Certain medicinal and recreational drugs are dangerous to society and should be made or remain illegal. I think it's talking about marijuana there. Listen, I don't like marijuana. I still think it should be legal for like medical purposes and stuff like that. So I'm going to say it's not a danger to society. It should not be remaining illegal. That said, I still think heavy marijuana use is bad, but I'm going to say it shouldn't be banned. With the red light thing, you should still be penalized because it disincentivizes you from doing it again and it can harm people if you do it again. I agree. And that's why I ultimately ended up saying that I think there are such crimes that's why I ended up changing my answer to basically say, even if there's no explicit victim, there can still be a crime. Decriminalize crocodile at least. Very well said. Very well said. By the way, guys, I think I've got 19 people watching on YouTube. If you guys are watching live on YouTube, please consider liking and subscribing. Would really appreciate it. Just help me reach more people with my channel. We've got about 7,900 subscribers there. It's a lot smaller than my Twitter account and stuff like that. But really long term, what I really want to be doing is moving to YouTube rather than Twitter because it's just a lot, you can reach more people. You can make more ad revenue. You can make it a full-time gig for yourself. So I'm really trying with YouTube. So I'd appreciate if you guys like and subscribe there. Police, fire, and ambulance services can be provided exclusively and effectively by the market. I think that's retarded, so oppose. I think there should be publicly funded firefighters, ambulances, and police. I think having that all privatized is retarded. People who assume the risk of harm to themselves are a burden on society and should be punished by law. Yeah, to an extent, yes, because I think if somebody is, taking very hard drugs, there has to be some level of penalties in the system. That doesn't mean I think people should be sent to prison for smoking an ounce of weed. But we should just have these laws on the books, though, when it comes to hard drugs like meth and stuff like that, because, it does put a burden on society. So I'm going to say agree. Restitution should be paid to victims or their families at the expense of the criminal or negligent wrongdoer. Yeah, I agree with that. Where am I right now? I'm just kind of in the libertarian middle. Rights such as due process and the presumption of innocence only interfere with obtaining criminal conviction. No, I'm fully in support of due process. So, rights such as due process and the presumption of innocence, they should not be interfered with. Juries should be able to judge not just the facts of a case, but also the justice of the law. I agree. And I think that actually is the case right now. I think in the common law system, you actually can kind of do that. Free market dispute resolution is ineffective and thus requires a system of justice funded through political means. I mean, this is just a question of like, do you think publicly funded courts should exist? And like, if you think that publicly funded courts should not exist, I think you're retarded because you actually need the rule of law in order to have the free market. So free market dispute resolution is ineffective and thus requires a system of justice funded through. Yes, I think the government should run courts, of course. Drug use should be reduced as much as possible, but once they're popular, it's impossible to eliminate use by reducing supply. Yeah, it's a very tough one. And I agree that like you don't necessarily want to like criminalize users. I think Portugal had an interesting strategy where they didn't criminalize the users themselves, but they did try and force these people to get treatment and stuff like that. And that contrasts a lot with like the Portland scenario, where Portland tried to decriminalize it, and they were saying that it's going to be a bit like the Portugal model, but effectively like they'd give somebody like a flyer on medical treatment and just would never actually get them to go. So I think you actually have to have some level of social sanction. You need to be able to force people to take treatment, like something like that, because otherwise these things can be so devastating for society. Have you heard of the Nordic model of drug legalization? I have heard of it, and I think Portugal's model is very interesting because, again, there are sanctions in the sense that like somebody who is caught using drugs is directed to medical programs and stuff like that, and they can't just skip the medical programs. I'm pretty sure they actually have to do it, which is different to the Portland scenario where like they just literally didn't even try. So I think the Portugal model, if you're going to do it, is probably the best one. What's the punishment in mind for people taking hard drugs? I don't know, maybe like a fine, maybe like direction towards like health services where you actually have to take a proper sort of like course on, you have to take some proper program to try and break addiction and habits and stuff like that. I think that's the thing. Like, I don't want to send people to jail for using drugs because I think that's retarded. Equally, there has to be some level of social penalty. You have to try and direct people towards programs that reduce harm and stuff like that. You can't just have like, because what Portland kind of did was just full libertarian free for all, and like that resulted in massive social breakdown. Prison abolition is the biggest wish cast position one can hold. Yeah, it really is retarded, and it kind of destroyed the left at the last American election. So yeah, look, one of the most basic functions of government is you have to maintain a basic level of law and order. If you can't do that, then you're just going to be destroyed by voters, and you're going to bring people like Trump to power. So my encouragement to center-left people, moderates, would be you have to actually just take law and order seriously. And I agree, yeah, it's got to be a carrot and a stick approach. So prisons as they currently exist are a violation of individual rights and should be opposed because that's retarded. The only legitimate use of force is in defense of individual rights against physical aggression. I mean, yeah, but I can see how this can be like abused to like then have this like hyper libertarian position where you're basically like, oh, I should be able to legitimately fire a bazooka at the government because of taxes, which is retarded. So I don't know. What do you guys think? Have you heard of the Nordic model approach to prostitution? I have heard of it, but I'm not too well versed with it. I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, but is it essentially that they make sure that the women themselves are not criminalized and they're directed towards help to get out of the industry, but the actual men and the Johns, like the pimps who do it, are still subject to penalties? Is that correct when it comes to the Nordic model? I think Tony Blair's slogan, I'm being tough on the causes of crime, and crime is the right approach. Yeah, true. And look, the funny thing is, damn, it's sad that Tony Blair did Iraq War, because if he hadn't done the Iraq War, he was really a good template for governance. Yeah, so I got it right about the Nordic model. Look, that actually sounds right to me. I think like the actual women themselves shouldn't be criminalized because a lot of them have been trafficked. A lot of them are really vulnerable situations. If you criminalize the women themselves, they won't get help. But I think maybe, like definitely the pimps should be criminalized, and people who traffic women, they definitely need to be criminalized. And it has to be like, you have to really try and stop the trafficking of women. In Finland, prostitution is legal, but pimping is not. I don't know about other Nordic countries. Look, that makes sense to me. Like, I think women shouldn't be, look, here's the thing, right? Like, my personal conservative social moral approach is that I do think it's a gross thing. Like, I don't think it's nice that people's bodies are sold like that. I think it's degrading to people. I think it's degrading to the human dignity of the person. That's my personal moral stance. At the same time, I think that criminalization is probably almost impossible because it is like known as the oldest profession, not for nothing, because like, it's literally been around since ancient times. I think probably the best way to reduce harm and try and help women get out of these terrible situations is probably to try and you focus on criminalizing the pimps, you focus on criminalizing the traffickers, you try and make it so that women are not put into these, like, they're the ones who make it really dangerous and violent and stuff like that. So yeah, I think it's a tough one. It's a tough one, right? Yeah, my personal moral stance, like here's an example of my personal moral stance, right? Like, I personally think that Hassan Piker is like a gross guy for going to like a brothel in Germany and like boasting about it. And like, that same brothel ended up being like raided on human trafficking charges. I personally think that's like really gross. I think it's just really gross that he cheers about it and boasts about it. I think it's just like a bad thing. I think a lot of guys do it in an exploitative way. So yeah, like my personal take is that I don't like it. That said, I just think that like criminalization, you've got a big risk of making the problem worse, because then you've got a situation where the women can be therefore in a much more vulnerable situation. They can be much more under the control of pimps and stuff like that. And therefore it's just a lot more dangerous for the women themselves. And my concern would mainly be for the women who are in the vulnerable situation. So potentially the way of doing it is the Nordic model, which seems to me to be like the best way to reduce the harm. Viet Trend, I think in Portland's case, you can't copy a system and expect the same result. It's two different societies. Plus, didn't Portugal have effective social programs running simultaneously with legalization? Yeah, that's actually a really good point, right? Like Portugal and Europe have a much higher baseline of like social trust, social cohesion. They have government programs that are running. There's better state capacity when it comes to social welfare stuff. So yeah, like it's kind of hard, right? Because like America already has a system where like if you fall off the deep end in that society, if you fall down the rungs of that society, very quickly you fall into like a really dangerous, scary, horrible world. I think Lindy Man talks about that, whereas like in America, you can basically have like, the access to the most wealth on earth. But if you fall through the cracks of that society, it is a really scary, dangerous, almost third world type situation. And so, yeah, I think just when you have those gaps in like the American society, you have those divisions in society, you have the weaknesses with the social welfare programs and stuff like that. You have that situation where if someone falls through the cracks, they can very easily just end up on like Skid Row in LA in really dangerous, violent, scary conditions. If you add to that, like you're going to try to do the Portugal model of like just decriminalizing like meth use, you can very quickly run into like just really scary, terrible situations. Yeah. Hey, Drew, why are you against Donald Trump? I mean, he's against CCP, not technically, but many tactics which CCP used. So enemy of my enemy is my friend. Listen, Tenzin, look at what he's done. He ended funding for the Tibetan administration in exile. He ended funding for Radio Free Asia, which was publishing Tibetan news in Tibetan language. He's talked over and over again about how he wants to do a big deal with China on trade. He talks about how he has a really good relationship with Xi Jinping. If you actually look at it, man, the sad thing is he's not helpful. He's bad on Tibet. He's bad on Taiwan. He's bad on the Uyghurs and Hong Kongers. He's just sadly not someone who's on our side, my friend. It's a really sad situation. And it's just really sad as well, like how he treated the Tibetans. Like he cuts the Tibetan news programs funded by the American government. I'm pretty sure he's cut funding for the CTA, the Central Tibet Administration, and like that puts the Tibetan cause back many years. It's a really sad thing. Okay, on this question, the only legitimate use of force is in defense of individual rights against physical aggression. It's tough because I think that can be weaponized by like libertarians to basically say that they have a right to like just like shoot up the government if they make you pay tax. So I don't know. I'm going to say like disagree. I remember finishing my exam and seeing that Trump won made me so sad, man. I thought maybe it won't be that bad. Unfortunately, I was wrong. Yeah, look, I've talked about this previously. I had a cope period. I was just so devastated on the day he won. And then I had a cope period where I was trying to convince myself he wouldn't be that bad. And I was trying to see silver linings everywhere. And I was saying to myself, oh, he's appointed Rubio, he's appointed Waltz. These guys are not too bad on China and Ukraine. They're not going to be that bad. But then once he got in, it's just worse than anything I ever expected. So I had to just repudiate all that former cope that I had. Trump is basically ensuring the Chinese century by nuking all of the US's soft power and alliances. That's my big concern as well, right? Tenzin, that's my big concern. Like, he's cutting up all the alliances. He's cutting up all the American alliance system in Asia. That's going to make it a lot easier for the Chinese government. All people have the right to self-defense, and they may agree to be aided by any other individual or group. Yep, support. Individuals do not have the right to possess firearms, and it should be made difficult or impossible to acquire them. Oppose. I'm not like full Second Amendment. Like what I mean by this, I just want to clarify. I'm not like full American Second Amendment. Like I think it's good that I think it's good that Australia has less guns than America and stuff like that. But that said, in America, I don't know, like in a society where people already have guns to defend themselves, I think trying to ban that is impossible, and it will just incite all this civil conflict and stuff like that. So look, I think there should be limits within reason. There shouldn't be like automatic rifles. There shouldn't be like bazookas and stuff like that. I think people should be able to have like, handguns and stuff like that for self-defense. Yeah. But it has to be regulated. You have to make sure criminals can't access them, all that stuff. People who use violence to defend themselves from physical aggression should be prosecuted. I mean, disagree, but I also want to clarify when I say disagree there. That doesn't mean that like I'm going to accept like a libertarian basically saying that he is right to shoot at the government over taxes. People who use violence to defend themselves should. Yeah, okay. Property owners should be free to set the rules regarding the presence of weapons on their property. Agree, I suppose. The law should restrict, register, and monitor the ownership, manufacture, and transfer of firearms and ammunition. Do I think there should be restrictions on like bazookas? Do I think that there should be monitoring, that you should stop criminals from getting this stuff? Then yes, I agree. Trump said he's going to send American criminals to El Salvador. What kind of president of that? Yeah, dude, it's pretty scary because my fear is that he would eventually just do that to anybody who opposes Trump, right? And that's just destruction of democracy. Workfare. I'm not really sure what you're talking about there. It's funny, if you remove your foreign policy tendencies, you are deeply socially conservative. Not really though, because like I've got personal, like on social morals, right? On social morals, like I've got some socially conservative opinions, but it doesn't mean that I believe that like the government should like crack down on gay people. Like I still think that, you know, same-sex marriage, people should be able to get married and stuff like that. So it's just like in my own personal life, I have like socially conservative values, but at the same time, I also don't think that like the government should go out there and like ban books about gay people and stuff like that. Like I do have overall a pretty live and let live approach. Does Australia's defense reliance on the USA currently under Trump make you anxious? Yeah, absolutely. I'm pretty nervous about it, guys. I'm pretty nervous about it. And that's sad because I was like the most pro-America guy. I was the most pro-America guy. And I'm now worried that like, you know, it's just a relationship that like, how do you know that they're actually going to come to your aid if you get attacked? If we get attacked by China, how do we know America's going to defend us? What if the violence in self-defense isn't proportional? Can you expand on that? Me too. Glad to know my neighbors don't have guns. Very unlikely. Why did Democratic Alliance get deregistered? I deregistered the party simply because we didn't have the resources to contest another election. And I decided that look, one day I do want to do politics again, but I want to try and build up my own life first. I want to build up my own resources. I've got to make a successful career for myself. Hopefully I'll be able to do this in like, you know, political commentary and media. I have to make my own career. I have to put my own affairs into order. I have to get more life experience and stuff like that. So look, I hope I can run again. I deregistered the party because I just thought it wasn't the right time to continue. I really didn't want to become a perennial candidate. I didn't want to be someone who like contests every single election and just gets 5,000 votes. Like I want to try and make sure that if I do ever run again in the future, I do it in a proper way and I do it from a position where I'm strong enough with my own resources that I can actually have a real crack at it. And people make fun of me because I didn't get many votes the last election. Listen, guys, like I was 21 years old. I think it was actually like just a credit to myself that as a 21-year-old, I was able to form the party and get on the ballot. I know I didn't get many votes, but like at least I got on the ballot, which was an achievement in and of itself. And look, the thing is, I do want to be involved in politics again one day, but I don't want to be a perennial candidate. I don't want to be someone who runs every election, gets 5,000 votes. If I ever run again, I want to do it properly. What that means is I need to get more life experience. I need to try and, you know, build up a proper career for myself. I need to try and build up my YouTube channel. I have to build up my own reach, have money that I have my own money as well. That's such a big part of it. Like I realized the last election that it was just so hard to run a party when you have no money. I mean, we got donations and stuff like that, but it's just nothing compared to like the big parties. Workfare is a governmental plan under which welfare recipients are required to accept public service jobs or to participate in job training. I don't know. I don't think that people. I mean, it can be counterproductive, right? Because if a nuclear scientist or a chemist loses their job, and then you tell them, oh, you have to go and dig ditches instead of trying to find another position in your field, oh, you should go and dig ditches instead of trying to like, you know, maybe re-educate yourself so that you can find a new industry. I think that becomes very counterproductive for society. So I think that like we shouldn't be punitive to people who lose their jobs. Obviously, you get people out there who, you know, exploit the system. I don't like that. But if you've got someone who's like, you know, an educated person who's trying very hard, they want to contribute to society, they unfortunately lose their job, they're trying to find a job in their field. Like, I don't think they should be punished for that, right? Like, I don't think it's helpful or nice for a society to try force somebody with like a PhD in nuclear engineering to like dig ditches because the local nuclear power plant shut down. Like, I think that's retarded, right? Do you think, Drew, do you still support Stephen Bonnell, aka Destiny? Amen, my friends. Drew, do you stand behind the Sex Pest Destiny? Listen, I don't agree with everything Destiny's done, but I disagree with some of his political takes, but overall, I do like Destiny. And I think it's unfair to call him a sex pest. I don't know the full veracity of the allegations against him. That said, I do want to say, Destiny, the way Destiny lives his social life is 1,000 times different to how I would like to live mine. I have kind of a socially conservative outlook in my own personal dealings with the world. Honestly, it's funny, right? Like people will see my Twitter, they think I'm a crazy guy, but honestly, I kind of just stay at home. I like reading. I like talking about politics. I like studying. My idea of fun is like reading. Like I don't like going to clubs. I don't like, the hedonistic culture of that's really popular these days, that sort of stuff. Sure, I agree, but it's not a specific case. Trump stopped many funding, which seems not favorable to the US. The thing is, Trump is the only one who's doing against CCP, which does harm. Look at CCP right now. Listen, I think Biden had pretty strong policies when it came to China. I think he had a strong policy in that he was building up the he was building up the alliances with countries in Asia. He was trying to avoid, I think Biden's approach is just way, way better, way stronger, because the realistic thing is America will never be able to confront China by itself. It needs the alliance systems, and Trump is now trying to burn all the alliance systems. So it just doesn't make sense. LMAO, every time I saw Marco, he looked like he was dying inside. I was hoping he'd push for Ukraine support under Trump, but no. Yeah, Marco is spiritually dead. It's actually sad as fuck. Steve, g'day, Champion Drew. Thank you so much, man. Thank you so much. Steve's joined almost every stream so far, so I appreciate it, guys. Thanks so much. Barry says, good for 21. What are you talking about, man? What do you think will happen with Ukraine's population issue post-war? Look, it's really sad. It's really hard. There's massive demographic problems both in Ukraine and Russia. I really pray that at the end of the war, hopefully there'll be a baby boom in Ukraine. That's what they really need. They really need to try and, they need the next generation, because they've got some really long-term demographic problems. Barry, I'm not 21. I'm 20. I'm turning 26 in June, unfortunately. So I'm a little bit older than that, but thank you. You probably got more votes than Sargon when he ran in the EU election 2019. Actually, that's funny. Let me try to find out. Sargon Akkad EU election. Let me see. I'm actually really interested now. So Carl Benjamin, he's shared me a couple times, but other times he's also attacked me. So it's very interesting. I don't really like the bloke. Obviously, he's got very different political opinions to me. How do I find out what his political campaign result was? So he got 3% of the vote in Southwest England. Let's see. That's probably, look, to be fair, I think unfortunately, that's more than I got. But I was 21 years old. Look, that's pretty good for 21 years old. It's hard to form a political party. I literally formed a political party from nothing. I didn't really have much money. No one really was helping me. And I sort of just just through sheer willpower alone, I was able to form it. It just was hard though, because I never was able to really get it off the ground. Okay, I'm going to try find out the 2019 results for Britain. Let's see. What's Britain's results? So 2019 Southwest England, I think it was that he ran in. Damn, it's hard to just find it. Okay, results. I've got the results here by constituting. So Southwest England, I think he ran in. Oh, shit. Oh, yep. Okay. Oh, no. Look, he got 50,000 votes. Because, look, Britain is also 4 times bigger than Australia in terms of population. 3 times bigger, I guess. Thoughts on nuclear engineers losing jobs due to nuclear and coal power plant shutdown? Should they transition to getting an education in renewables? I support nuclear power. So I think shutting down nuclear power is a really stupid strategy. What do you mean, bro? America being a backwards hermit kingdom is the only way it can beat China. So true. Absolutely. Lameo, Destiny recorded women having sex with him for blackmail and the leaks were everywhere. Are you really a good conservative to support him? Listen, firstly, I wouldn't even necessarily describe myself as a conservative. Secondly, if he did that, that's bad. I don't know if that's the full truth. It's hard because there's a lot of propaganda online, right? It's very hard to assess that. What about coal? Look, I just don't think that there's a future in the coal industry. I don't support green style banning it overnight because that's retarded and it leads to massive energy price inflation. I think there should be a slow transition away from coal towards stuff like natural gas, nuclear power, wind and solar. It should be a mix. Beautiful clinker. Ensuring that individuals have respect for property rights is fundamental to maintaining a free and prosperous society. Agree. I do support private property rights. All forms of property contracts should be regulated and enforced by some kind of political authority. Yes, I believe contracts should be enforced by courts. People have the right to control and enjoy their property so long as their choices do not infringe on the rights of others. Yeah, sure. Fuck, okay, yeah, I think that's fine. I was just trying to think of like edge cases in my head, and I was like, shit, does that mean I have to support Epstein's Island? I was like, no, of course not, because that obviously involves rights abuses. The practices of eminent domain and civil asset forfeiture are abuses of political power that need to be eliminated. Look, no, because you like if the government wants to build like a high-speed railway and there's just someone being obtuse and just stopping that from happening, you have to think about the public good as well. So I think, yeah. To protect the poor from the rich, limits on profits, production mandates, and controls and prices are necessary. No, I'm against profit controls. I'm against price controls too. For voluntary dealings, parties should be free to trade with whomever they want and on mutually agreeable terms. Support, but I do want to just clarify for viewers, not if the party is sanctioned. So that doesn't extend to like trade with Russia or China if there's sanctions, right? Also, Destiny Discord leaks showed him saying, look, I don't know. I don't fucking know this stuff, right? Like, I don't know who this Mike guy is. It could just be propaganda. I don't know. It's hard to assess on the internet these days. Proportionality is when you use appropriate force to when someone is aggressing on you. For example, you can't pull out a gun to someone. Yeah, of course. If someone's punching you, I don't think you should be able to like shoot them. Like, it's pretty obvious. It should be proportionate. The only concern I have with nuclear is if we have enough water for nuclear, as nuclear is a pretty thirsty power source. Yeah, look, it is tough in Australia because it's a thirsty power source. If we can somehow do it with desalination or something like that, it could work maybe. But I do understand it is a thirsty power source. That is tough. Thoughts on the Dutton v. Albanese nuclear versus renewable energy debate? I think they're really fucking boring, both of them, unfortunately. Landowners have no incentive to maintain natural resources and as such need to be regulated by political authority. Look, I think landowners do have an incentive to maintain natural resources, but does need to be some level of regulation because I don't want people dumping toxic sludge into rivers. So I don't know, just neutral, I guess, on that. To prevent the tragedy of commons, such as pollution and misuse of resources, all land should be privatized. No, I believe like there should be natural parks and stuff. So environmental protection requires that natural resources be held in common and private ownership restricted. No, I think there should be private ownership. That's retarded. Why doesn't Australia have nukes? Look, we might be heading into a future where we do end up with nukes. If America sort of abandons Australia, it's maybe the only thing that we can do to protect ourselves. You know, nuclear doesn't have to use water as a coolant, right? True. You should talk a bit more about that, troublesome. Someone asked, are you atheist or agnostic? No, I'm a Greek Orthodox Christian. So I was baptized into the Greek Orthodox Church. I do believe in God. I believe in Jesus. This is my personal faith. I don't believe in like proselytizing and annoying people about it. And I definitely try and avoid having like any kind of supremacist outlook in religion. I also, so for example, like I really hate like Nick Fuentes and stuff. These guys being fake Christians and they use Christ as king just to scream at Jewish people and stuff like that. And it's clear they don't even really believe in God and Jesus and stuff like that. So listen, like I'm a Greek Orthodox Christian. I try and avoid a supremacist outlook, and like I want to see peace and faith. I want to see peace between people of all religions and stuff like that. My personal faith is important to me. Yeah. Drew's right. I got paid by the Russians and Andrew Tate to spread propaganda on your 21 viewer live stream. Well said. Well said. It's a very powerful live stream. Molten salt reactor, water really doesn't have a lot of heat capacity. If we can do molten salt reactors, that sounds goated to me. Profits hinder the behavioral changes required to protect the environment, necessitating political intervention. Like again, I think there should be some level of political intervention, but this question's framing it as though like profits are bad. So I don't know, I just go neutral there, I suppose. Environmental advocacy and social pressure are more effective means of changing behavior than political action. I mean, but isn't environmental advocacy and social pressure a form of political action? I'm just going to go neutral. Politically funded subsidies for energy production should be abolished, leaving the market free to decide what's best. No, I actually disagree because I think that there should be I think the government in Australia, for example, should try build nuclear. So I think there should be some level of government involvement in energy production. Energy pricing, allocation, and production are too important to be left to the market, necessitating political intervention. To some extent, yes. Because like you do need to have like government regulation of the energy market. So I'm going to say agree. People who think they're entitled to keep what they earn are being selfish and should just pay their fair share. I mean, I know it's like going to be abused by libertarians who think like tax should be abolished, but at the same time, I don't think like people are being selfish just because they want to keep what they earn. So again, I'll say disagree, but I just want to clarify again for viewers. Like, I don't support like libertarian policies on like abolishing all taxes, because you need to have a functioning society. It is valid to say that contributing our fair share is a price we must pay for civilization. Yes, I agree. You have to pay into society to try keep civilization going. The budgets of political authority should be balanced by curbing expenditure and not by raising revenues. I mean, it just depends on it just always depends on the context. So I say neutral. I've got a very pragmatic outlook. People are free to purchase any product or service they wish and should not be forced to pay for anything. Yeah, I agree. People shouldn't be compelled to buy like Elon's. Like, if Trump tries to compel people to buy fucking Teslas, that's wrong. So I'm going to say yes, people should be free. Someone says, I've heard of molten salt reactors. I thought there were some issues with that. Like, didn't the US ditch it? The only decent thing AFD pushed was nuclear power. Germany's getting cucked by its reliance on Russian gas, while France's nuclear infrastructure has everyone jealous. France's nuclear infrastructure is beautiful. It is the best, beautiful model for energy sovereignty. I really am jealous of France's nuclear position. France has really looked after itself well. De Gaulle was a far-sighted genius. I know it wasn't... Yeah. No, I would say that, yeah. De Gaulle was a far-sighted genius. I think that's fair to say. Okay, free market banking with competition among institutions of all types is preferable to a central bank model. I mean, like, yeah, there should be free market banks. I just want to clarify that doesn't mean I think that you should abolish like the Federal Reserve. I think that part's retarded. I'll just say in general, like, I think there should be, private banks. At the same time, it needs to be regulated. So I don't know. It's hard because some of these questions are really absolute, and I've got like a kind of moderate stance on them. Drew, what did you think when Mao swam in a river and said, "You are either a smart fella or a fart smeller"? Good. That's a good saying. I agree with that. I liked how Mao would float in rivers. It was very funny and retarded. Profits and losses are a burden for society to bear, not the individuals making the decisions. I don't believe in socializing losses of companies. I also think that profits shouldn't be fully socialized. So no. Individuals who engage in voluntary exchange should be free to use as money any mutually agreeable object. I mean, no, because I could see like should Jeffrey Epstein be able to like fucking trade child slaves? Like, of course not. So I'm going to say disagree. Like, I don't know. Inflationary monetary policies and legal tender laws damage the economy and should be abolished. So they're saying like abolish the Federal Reserve. This is like hardcore libertarian spook shit. I think that's stupid. Like, you need to have fiat currency work. So I'm going to say no. No, you shouldn't abolish money. That's retarded. Someone says Mao's a great man. Yeah, kill 50 million people. Would you hang out with Ian Miles Chong in Malaysia? Yeah, so true. I'd love to do that. I'd love to just be locked in a room with Ian Miles Chong forever. How good would that be? Would you support organ trade? No, I don't like organ trade. I don't like that. I think, though, that maybe we should have a policy where we really try and encourage like people to be organ donors in society, but I don't believe in like, organ trade. I don't know. Is there a good argument for this? I don't think like people should be selling their organs. I think that's wrong, but I think like maybe we should have like an opt-out process when it comes to organ donors. So like everyone is assumed to be an organ donor unless they physically opt out. I don't know. Someone says Mao is great. It is a fact he changed history. Yeah, but you could change history for the worse. That's the problem. That's the problem. You can change history for the worse. Oh my God. Anyway, it is valid to say that throughout history, money has been the root of most, if not all, the evils in the world. No, I actually think that's retarded because I think the problem is like human nature, rather than money. So I think that's retarded. People have the right to form partnerships, cooperatives, firms, and other entities based on voluntary association. Yeah, sure. Private ownership of the means of production is theft. It should be owned by workers instead. Oppose. I think that there should be private means of production. Politically funded subsidies and bailouts to business, labor, and other special interests should be abolished. I mean, yeah, I suppose so. I don't know, but actually, you know what? I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no because you need to have some level of government subsidy for stuff at the really cutting edge of science and technology, right? So I think it would be good for the American government to, be backing players at the really, pointy end of like, quantum computing and AI and stuff like that. I mean, that's what China's doing, and we don't want them to get ahead of us. So I'm not going to say abolish all subsidies. Oh, shit. Am I on mute? Can you guys hear me? I predict that your political compass test will be close to center. It is pretty center right now. Can you guys hear me? I'm hoping that I'm not muted. Somebody wrote mute. I've got 24 people watching live on YouTube. Thank you guys for watching. Can you guys hear me? Yeah, okay. People can hear me. Okay, cool. It was not for him, China would have been split into 11 countries. That's retarded. That's so dumb. Okay. Going on. So politically created entities should be able to compete with private enterprise within any industry. I mean, look, I still think that there should be some, publicly owned companies, especially when it comes to like really cutting edge technology. So yeah, sure. Again, I've actually got a pretty pragmatic approach. Like, Deng Xiaoping said, it doesn't matter whether a cat is black or white as long as it catches mice. So I'm overall a pro-market guy. I'm overall pro-capitalism. I still think that the government should step in to correct market failures, and government should step in to try subsidize, leading players at the really cutting edge of technology and science, because that's what China's doing. We don't want them to get ahead of us. So I'm very pragmatic about this. Employment agreements should be unencumbered by the social engineering of political authority. I mean, if I were to say agree, that would mean that a child can agree to do child labor. So no, disagree. Like there should be a basic standard for employment agreements in society. Employers and employees should be required by law to bargain with each other through a labor union. I don't think required by law. I would prefer people do bargain through labor unions because I think it does give individuals more power. I don't think it should be required by law. Membership in a labor union should be a requirement for obtaining employment in any job. I don't think in any job, right? Like that's a bit silly. Like if I want to be a streamer, you shouldn't have to be part of like a political streamer union, right? So I'm just going to say neutral, right? Centrist liberal results so far, pretty similar to mine. Goated. Sorry, Drew, I started late. I got caught up in a Greek Orthodox church Good Friday procession. That's awesome, man. Good on you for going to Good Friday. Happy Good Friday. Yeah, good stuff. That's awesome, man. It's so cool that you're Greek Orthodox as well. That's awesome. Osnian reckons he can hear me. Thank you. That's good. China was already a functional country under the Kuomintang. Look, the Kuomintang wasn't good, but the CCP was a disaster. China is ahead of us in some branches of technology. That's the sad reality, I think, unfortunately. Would you rather have a beer with Hassan or Ethan Klein? Definitely Ethan Klein. I definitely wouldn't want to have a beer with Hassan. I don't drink, but I definitely, if I had to, I'd definitely not Hassan. Or doggy. Sorry, doggy almost fell. How do you square the rising hereditary IQ belief system on Twitter? Do you think it's important? Listen, this is the thing, right? Like there are studies that show that even just basic interventions, like for example, like making sure people have access to good food, like so that they're not starving with malnutrition, even just simple interventions like that can actually increase IQ. So I don't think it's like a fixed thing, right? You can actually improve outcomes through, social intervention. And you see a trend across the world that IQ has been rising as we've dealt with things like malnutrition and poverty in childhood and stuff like that. So listen, I don't want to say I'm not one of those like full race realist guys who think that everybody's just like sorted from birth. I think the world is far more complex. I think, people have a choice to try to improve their conditions. I don't think anything's deterministic like that. I think it does come down to how we structure society, whether we, do things as a society to try to address things like childhood poverty, do things as a society to address childhood diseases, malnutrition. All these things have a massive impact on IQ. Drew, for a Greek, your last name is very short, lol. Now, it's funny. My family's Greek surname originally was Themistocles, which is like the Athenian general. And when they came to Australia, they deliberately shortened it to Pavlou, I think because they thought people wouldn't be able to pronounce Themistocles, which is funny. What test is this? This is the Specker test, SPEKR. I think it's actually the best political compass test on online. Cashless debit card, yes or no? In what sense? Russian Orthodox here, Christos Anesti. Listen, Alistos Anesti, truly he is risen. It's a sad thing that the Russian Orthodox Church is controlled by Kirill and these people who, unfortunately, I think don't have much faith in them. I think, unfortunately, it's very much controlled by the Russian government. But the actual true Orthodox faith, when there's a real spirituality there, it's a beautiful thing. Compulsory arbitration and bargaining are necessary to ensure that bosses do not exploit the workers. I mean, I don't think it should be necessarily compulsive. I do think it's better to have unions, but yeah. Provision of education should be monopolized by political authorities, made available free of charge. Listen, I want free public school education to exist, but I also think that private schools should exist as well. So I'm going to say it shouldn't be fully monopolized. Free market education achieves greater quality, accountability, and efficiency with more diversity of choice. Neutral, because I think strong public education can also be really good. The education of children is the sole financial responsibility of parents or guardians, not some political authority. No, because I think I don't think a parent has the right to just neglect and destroy their child's future. So I'm going to say oppose. Health insurance exploits the sick and dying to make a profit, and there should be regulated by law. Like, yeah, it should be regulated. So of course, agree. I do want to say I don't have like the Luigi Mangione mindset where like everyone involved in health insurance is evil. I don't think that's true, but it should be regulated by law. So I'm going to say agree. All individuals should be free to determine the level of health insurance they want, if any. No, I think you need to have a basic level of health insurance in society, because otherwise you are going to have people bankrupted due to, cancer, all that sort of stuff. So I'm going to say disagree. Drew, do you like the old pizza show on SBS? Get a kebab, you wob. Cheers, mate. Legend. I heard the Greek Orthodox Church is richer than the state and has blocked archaeological digs. I don't actually know about that. But look, it is an interesting thing that the Greek Orthodox Church sided with the Ukrainians and they actually like sort of broke from the Russians. So it's interesting. And I'm proud of that fact. Healthcare is too important to be controlled by political action and should therefore be provided by the market. Look, I think there should be, I think there should be private healthcare in the world. So I'm going to say yes, but overall, though, I do believe in universal public healthcare. Society has a vested interest in preventing loss of life. Therefore, suicide and euthanasia should be illegal. Look, I'm going to have to say agree, guys. And that's where probably my concern for social cohesion and the welfare of society trumpets like a kind of libertarian position. I think the problem with euthanasia is that when you regulate it like this, the problem is that you have a risk. And we see this in Canada where you might have older people who are pressured to basically take the route of euthanasia because they're a burden on the state and society and the healthcare system. And I think that's morally wrong. It's a very hard thing because I think people who are terminally ill and in extreme pain, they should have the option to try and, relieve their suffering. So in select extreme cases, yes. But I think overall, like if you look at the Canada example, euthanasia there has been really done in a really bad way. Have you ever heard of Mount Athos? Yeah, it's very funny. Like there are no women on that place. I actually know two guys. I actually know two Greek guys in my city of Brisbane who've gone to Mount Athos before. I was very jealous because it's like that's such an amazing thing to just be able to do one day. That's definitely on the bucket list. It's a very strange place. There's the famous story that's potentially apocryphal. People don't know whether it's true or not. But apparently there was at least one guy who was like sort of dropped off on the island as a baby and he just never saw a woman in the entire course of his life, which is funny. I don't know if that one's true, but it's an interesting place, Mount Athos. I couldn't do it. I actually like women, but it's an interesting place in the world. Greek Orthodox Church is surprisingly based. Do you think it's viable that every country on earth tries to imitate Scandinavia? It's like not every country is as high trust as them. Look, it's a hard thing. I hope that, over time we can try build up social cohesion in societies, build up social trust. I think the long term, I'm not sure how long it'll take, but if we can try get everyone to, the same standard of living as a place like Finland and Norway and stuff like that, like that would be a really good thing for humanity. Drew, what do you think of the Katy Perry science mission faked? I don't think it's faked. ADHD, try doctor-assisted suicide. Yeah, that seems to be the Canada approach, which I think is a bit sad. Oh, gee, we're getting up. The YouTube audience is building a bit. We've got 29 people. Thank you, guys. Please like and subscribe. I've been streaming every day now for the past 5 days. And so if you guys can subscribe, I'd really appreciate it. Help me reach more people. I'd love to go to Relic of the Past. Yeah, it would be really cool just to see Mount Athos one day with my own eyes. I would like to do that. In Queensland, there was a person who had death pills prescribed to them over telehealth and sent in the mail. The recipient died before the pills arrived. Their distraught partner took them instead. Oh, that's a really bad case. That's a really, really sad case. That's the hard thing, guys. Like, you have to be really careful with this stuff because, I certainly don't take to the full libertarian position where it's like, just you don't have any concern for society whatsoever and just only focus on individuals. You do have to think about the broader social health of society. Someone please provide the link to the test route. I'll actually just put it. Let me comment it, guys. I'll share it. Okay, I'm sharing the thing in the comment section on YouTube. So if you're watching on Twitter, if you wanna use this test too, I've commented the link on my YouTube comment section. I'll put that on the stream. Scandinavia is more to cultural values than ideology. Here in Spain, the local social democrats are so corrupted, incapable, and every day more authoritarian. Look, that's a sad thing as well. Like there's a lot of cases where socialist parties have just been really corrupt. Like a really good example of that is Argentina. Favorite Brisbane suburb, Toowong is pretty goated. Probably Coorparoo because that's where I grew up. That's where I went to school. I had so many friends always there when I was growing up. I think Coorparoo probably just for the memories, I've always been sort of like a South Side guy. So yeah, I'd have to say like Cooper is probably my favorite suburb. Brisbane's a beautiful city. Like honestly, more people should see it. It's a beautiful place. Society has vested interest in preventing loss of life. Therefore, suicide and euthanasia should be illegal. Yeah, I agree. It should be illegal. Provision of healthcare should be monopolized by political authorities and made available free of charge. I think it should be free of charge, but I think it shouldn't be monopolized. I still think that there should be such thing as private healthcare. So I'm going to say neutral. Yeah. Not all individuals will take responsibility for planning their retirement. Therefore, an age pension should be provided. Look, I think there needs to be an age pension. Politically funded welfare should be replaced with voluntarily funded insurance, charity, and mutual aid. No, I think there does need to be welfare in society. Most people will not voluntarily help the poor. Therefore, it is incumbent on political authorities to provide welfare. Yes, support. That's where I get more lefty, I guess. Charity and civil society will weaken if political authorities do not have the power to direct such activity. Look, I think there is a role for government. To ensure global stability, political authorities need to form alliances and act as the world police. I only agree insofar as democracies should do that. I don't think China and Russia should ever be the world police. To ensure the security of the nation, service in the military should be compulsory for all citizens. I'm going to say disagree, but it does depend in the future. If in a scenario where Australia were to be invaded by an outside power, then you'd have to reconsider that, of course. There's no such thing as inalienable rights, and they can be suspended during times of war or crisis. No, I oppose that. You need to have due process even in times of crisis and war. Okay. Intelligence agencies would not be effective if they were subjected to oversight and transparency. No, that's retarded. They should be subjected to at least a minimum basic of oversight and transparency. Laws that create political secrets, which prevent society from knowing the truth, should be abolished. I mean, but you have to be reasonable about this, right? Like, I'm not a full Edward Snowdenist because, like, the government does need to have some level of protection for some top government secrets because you can't just give them all to China. So, I'm going to say no, that's retarded. Yeah, I'm going to say, like, you need to have some level of secrets for, like, military planning and stuff like that because you don't want it to be the case that China just knows everything about your military and all that stuff. So that's just simple common sense, I reckon. +1 for Cooperoo, Southside on top. Yeah. Southside's awesome. Also, you know what's funny? I'd say increasingly one of my favorite suburbs in Brisbane is Sunnybank, and people might like laugh when they hear me say that, and they might think it's shocking for me because like people have this stereotype that I'm like anti-Chinese or whatever, which is not true. I actually love going to Sunnybank Market Square, man. It's so fucking cool. I love to get like all the nice Asian food, Korean barbecue. I like hot pot. I like sushi. I love Asian food. I love Sunnybank. It's a fun place to go. I have a lot of fun when I go to Sunnybank. You said that euthanasia should be legal in extreme cases. Like, look, if someone's in excruciating pain and they've got like 3 months to live and there's no prognosis for survival, maybe in that scenario, yes, but it needs to be really heavily regulated. Why do you think so many elected Democrats seem to have not cared about the efficacy of their programs and projects? It's a big problem. And Ethan Klein is really trying to hammer into that right now with the abundance agenda. That is one of the biggest long-term problems for the Democrats. They've just been really bad in government in America, and that's what's killed them. They just have really governed blue cities really badly, unfortunately. Do you think a global world government should be the world police? Total domination? Yeah, I don't believe in a global world government. That's retarded. But I do hope that the democracies will be, I do hope that democracies beat the dictatorships, of course. Have you considered moving to New Zealand? It's a very nice country. Look, I haven't gone to New Zealand before. I'd love to travel there. I don't want to move to New Zealand at the moment. I love Australia. My home is in Australia. I don't really see myself moving beyond Australia right now. Asian communities are pretty dope. Dude, I love being able to go to like the Vietnamese bakery and getting a fucking goated banh mi. Like, these guys are cool. The banh mi's in Australia, the Vietnamese owned bakeries, they go fucking hard. And that's a strong reason why I couldn't ever be an ethno status, it's true. Did you see that Taiwanese woman that called you out for saying Russia shouldn't have military bases in Indonesia? Oh my God, fuck off. I think her name's Angelica. We agree with each other on nuclear power being good, but she's got just like full John Mearsheimer brain on foreign policy. So she's just got no idea. I've got to make a YouTube video, guys. I actually confronted John Mearsheimer in real life when he came to Brisbane. And, the Vietnamese oven at Berenda Village. I don't think I've been there before, but I think I've heard of that before. I should try it. What was I talking about? Yeah, dude, banh mi's go fucking hard. That is a goated food. Oh yeah, Angelica. Yeah, we agree with each other. Nuclear power's good, but she's got John Mearsheimer brain, And yeah, she was going like, Drew, you're a hypocrite for saying that, Ukraine should be in NATO, but Russia shouldn't have a military base in Australia. It's like, Ukraine wants to be in NATO as a defensive alliance. They're not thinking of invading Russia. Now, why would Russia have an air base in Indonesia? It's only purely from an offensive position, right? So it's just a stupid analogy. And also, I don't even think it's hypocritical to just be like, I support democracy, dictatorships are bad. So of course I'm going to have a different standard for democracies like Australia compared to dictatorships like Russia. Like that's just fucking basics logic, right? Like why would I hate this idea, right? Where they're like, oh, if you want to avoid being a hypocrite, you have to say that you have to say that everything's the exact same. It's like, no, democracies are just completely better than dictatorships. So I will hold dictatorships to a different standard to democracies. Yeah, New Zealand does have a beautiful country. I do want to go there. I do definitely want to travel there. Haha, I have a suggestion under the stream with Drew Short why we should invade New Zealand. Oh yeah, I had a meme joke. Where when Tucker Carlson did his stupid shit where he went to the Moscow supermarket and he was trying to say like, wow, it's so advanced because the Moscow supermarket's so advanced, like Russia should be allowed to do whatever it wants. So I took the piss and I went to just like my local supermarket and I was just like, oh, this place is really good. Okay, we can invade New Zealand right now. To my New Zealand friends, it was a joke. Thanks for linking the tweet. Yeah, thanks for linking the tweet, guys. That was Angelica's tweet, and she was just basically like, Drew, you're such a hypocrite because you don't think that Russia and Australia are exactly the same from a moral position. No, that's just stupid. Like, of course I have a different standard for democracies compared to dictatorships. Who do you think will be PM after May 3, and who would you like to be PM? It's interesting, right? Like, I actually thought I thought that Peter Dutton was going to win the election, but the bottom's fallen out of his campaign, and I think it's a lot to do with Trump. It's really scared a lot of Australians. I think Albanese is odds on to probably win at this point. I have to say I don't really like either, and like if I had to pick with a gun to my head, I'd probably go Elbow, but I don't like Elbow though. I don't like Elbow. Lay off the snacks and hit the gym. Thanks, man. I look, guys, I've actually lost like almost 15 kilos the past like 9 months, so like. It's okay. The bullying does actually help motivate. Is it a Western liberal democracy trait to stuff your face with decadent foods? Dude, like you could say that to me 6 months ago, but I'm in a much better place now. So it's just dumb. The United States is the world's police force, for better or worse. The bases serve to prevent conflicts, for example, or to defend global trade. Russian bases are purely for military purposes. Yup, that's literally my position. But that said, though, it's unfortunate because I love America, but unfortunately under Trump, they're becoming almost like a rogue regime. Do you hope Carney or Poilievre wins? Look, I don't know enough about Canadian politics. I do have to say, though, the Liberals have done a really bad job. They've governed really, really bad the past couple of years. Foreign policy should seek to keep a nation in a position of strength relative to that of other nations. Yes, I think we should be kept in a position of strength against Russia and China. Foreign policy should favor defense rather than aggression and avoid diplomatic entanglements. Look, like, of course I favor defense rather than aggression, but this second part to the question where it says avoid diplomatic entanglements, like that seems to me to be like saying that it should be isolationist, and I don't agree with isolationist, so I'm just going to be neutral on this. Foreign interventions, including military and economic aid, are necessary for preserving the security of the nation. Yeah, I think it's important that you have diplomacy rather than isolationism, so I'm going to say support. All people have the right to resist tyranny and defend themselves, their rights and the rights of others. Absolutely support. To increase wealth and reduce poverty, all impediments to free trade should be abolished. I would almost agree, but I just do think still in strategic sectors, like stuff that has like military dual purpose technology, you do need to have restrictions. So it's hard. I am generally a free trader. So look, I'm going to say agree because I generally do believe in free trade, but I do want to clarify that I'm not a full libertarian. I do believe in some strategic sectors of the economy, you need to have trade controls. For example, Britain did a really retarded thing where I think they literally sold a nuclear power plant to China. And that's just brain dead retarded to me, right? And so from a free trade perspective, that just fails. So again, I do favor free trade. I'm going to say agree, but I do want to clarify, I'm not full libertarian about it. I don't know why humanity is still fumbling when many idealists and leaders in 1943 were expecting the UN to be a step forward toward a democratic, stateless world post-World War II, like Wendell Willkie. It's a shame. It's a shame. I wish that the dictatorships were not on the rise. How is lovable Trump, the host of The Apprentice, now a rogue state sci-fi villain? Maybe because he's sending people who've never been convicted of crimes to life in a gulag, and he's threatening to send American citizens to life in gulag, and he is supporting Russia to invade Ukraine and helping them kill Ukrainian civilians. There's a lot of reasons. Political freedom and escape from tyranny require that individuals not be prevented from crossing political borders. Oh, it's so hard. Like, again, I favor strong borders. I do feel sympathy for people who are escaping like hardcore tyranny. Like, I'm just going to say neutral here because, look, I do favor strong borders, but I think in extreme cases where somebody has a threat to their life, like we should have a humanitarian policy in those extreme cases. Trade is too important to go unregulated and should be restricted by some kind of political authority. Again, I support trade, but you have to have some political restrictions as well because you can't just like have a policy where like Britain sold a nuclear power plant to China. So I'm going to have to say agree. Economic freedom demands the unrestricted movement of human as well as financial capital across political borders. No, I don't believe in full open borders. All people without exception are born with an inherent right to their life, liberty, and property. Yep, agree. There are some rights that can impose an obligation upon other individuals to fulfill that right. Yes, I believe you have an obligation not to kill other people. Support. Law should neither deny nor abridge human rights based upon biological characteristics or personal preferences. Yeah, support. I don't think people should be discriminated based against biology. Private organizations can set standards of association and individuals can respond with ostracism or boycotts. I mean, agree. I'll say agree in general. That said, I do want to clarify, I don't agree with like Jim Crow shit. Parents or other guardians have the right to raise their children according to their own standards and beliefs. Yes, I'm going to say agree, but also that said, I also want to clarify here because it's an absolute statement. I want to clarify within reason, it shouldn't extend to like allowing child abuse and stuff like that. Parents should be able to abuse and neglect their children without fear of intervention from anybody. No, opposed. That's fully retarded. That's one question where I literally could not even understand anybody having the other side. That parents should be allowed to abuse and neglect their children without fear of intervention. That's fully retarded and psycho. Without the state to protect society from the violence of human nature, there would be chaos and disorder. Yes, I do believe the state is necessary. It is the right of every individual to resist tyranny and abolish it, replacing it with a system that respects individual rights. Yes, I agree in when you're confronting genuine dictatorships and stuff like that, you have a right to resist that and try to bring about democracy. The state is an inherently immoral institution and should be torn down as soon as possible. No, that's retarded. You need statehood. Okay. Damn, that's pretty centrist. Look, it's hard because, centrists get a bad name. They get a bad name as weak and stuff like that. I've got a kind of more radical position where I'm not just a fence sitter. I have very strong views for the views that I do hold. But did you watch Mickey 17? I haven't watched it yet. I do want to actually see that. Shouldn't Britain help China with nuclear power to reduce reliance on coal? I mean, yes, but they shouldn't. Nothing that would be sensitive military technology. Trump was on Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. How is he like Hitler or Mussolini? So true, bro. That's retarded. So because Trump was once on a TV show, it's fine for him to deport American citizens convicted of no crime to a foreign gulag to be imprisoned for life. So true. I want to go with my girlfriend and live in California. Now with Trump, I'm afraid that they'll detain us randomly, even though we don't have any criminal record or anything, just because of our names. That's so sad. I actually wanted to try, I've always wanted to spend at least 6 months or a year in America. And it's a sad thing that right now it does seem pretty dangerous. This test is bad. Most questions heavily depend on context and have massive exceptions. I know this is the hard thing with this is the hard thing with political compass tests. Hey, there's always going to be these big exceptions, and they give you these absolute statements, and it's really hard because you want to try and clarify them, but then that changes the answer so much. Oh, gee. I voted for you number 1 on the Senate ticket 3 years ago. Any of you endorsing any senators or minor parties this time around? First of all, I want to say thank you so much for voting for me on the Senate ticket last time. I don't run into people very often who voted for me because I didn't have that many votes. So I just want to say to this guy, thank you so much. That's very nice of you. Thanks for putting that faith in me. I really appreciate it. Listen, I'm going to try think about that question. It's a good question. I'm going to try put out a proper sort of video, a proper kind of video essay type thing on the state of Australian politics prior to the election, because I do want to try offer my thoughts. It's a hard state. It's a hard position right now because for me, I just don't really feel that politically represented. I feel pretty politically homeless, where I dislike things about both of the major parties and a lot of the minor parties too. So I'm going to try think about this. I'm going to try make a proper video about this. Danny thinks Trump's shock troopers are randomly detaining people. That's literally what's happening in some places. Unfortunately, that's literally what's happening in some places. I always hate the deregulation question. Good regulations are good and bad regulations are bad. Yeah, exactly, man. I completely agree. If we're talking about some of the bad regulations that Ezra Klein, for example, mentions in his book, stuff that are just fully retarded, of course I'm against that. That said, just very basic stuff against child slavery, of course I'm in favor of a regulation banning child slavery. So it's hard to have these sort of absolutist statements when you're doing these tests. How did you feel about UQ Taco Tuesday? God bless him. Damn, that one person who voted for you is in the chat. Very funny, man. I had about 4,500 people vote for my party in Queensland, and my party had my name in it. So it was about 4,500 people. It's not the best. It was not that good, but like, look, it's a start. I was 21 years old, and look, for 21 years old, it was a start. I had the final number of preferences who put me in their top six. Like, so for the Senate, you vote for your top six candidates. The total number of people who put me in their top six across Queensland was about 150,000 people. And look, that was pretty significant because I didn't have any preference deals with any other party. So no other party ever put me on their how to vote cards or anything. So about 150,000 people saw my name on the ballot and put me in their top six, which is, in the top six electable positions. It's a start, right? I was 21 years old. It's cool. Can you speak a little slower in your video essay? Just watch your video on Mao Mega. You talk so far. Yeah, man, I will. Listen, I'm new to content creation. I got to improve on some of this stuff. I appreciate the constructive feedback. I'm going to try and make sure that future video essays I talk a bit slower. I actually said this to my editor. I was like, should I just refilm? I think I was speaking too fast. And we ended up deciding, like, let's just get it out there, because it had already taken me like 5 days to write the script, and it was taking ages. And I didn't want to I didn't want to post the video. And by the time I posted it, it was no longer relevant. So we just put it out. But I completely agree. I did speak too fast, and I'll try to fix that in the next one. You should explain what preferences are to the Americans. Yeah, look, we do have a pretty good system in Australia where, obviously you put your first preference down on the ballot paper, and then you're able to put down your number 2 preference, your number 3 preference, and so on. And that basically just means your vote isn't wasted. So if your first preference like loses, you've still got an option. And where that would help Americans, right, is like, you got these third-party candidates. Like, it'd be interesting if you guys had preferences. I wonder, like, how much like third-party candidates would get. There's probably a world where, like, some of these third-party candidates could probably get like 10% of the vote, and people would then feel safe to then just preference, like, say, the Democrats or Republicans next, that know their vote isn't wasted. So it's an interesting system. I'm really happy that we have preferential voting in Australia. I think it's a good thing. I feel like it does give you more choice, because, like, in a scenario where, like, my first preference candidate isn't elected, I am happy that it gets distributed, right? Like, and it's a way to kind of keep extremists out of office, right? Because like say a guy who's running as a Nazi party, if 90% of people put them as the last preference, like, no matter what, they're just not going to get in there. Did you end up suing Jackson Hinkle? I actually really wanted to. I didn't have the chance to do it because it's very hard to sue someone in America. Is it possible to vote for a single person? I think you have to number the preferences. I think you do have to number the preferences. I think in the Senate, you can... Sorry, let me just fact check really quickly. Can you just... I think because sometimes the Senate voting rules are a little bit separate. Let me just double check. I just want to... Look, I think you actually have to do preferences. Who are you voting last, Drew? I don't know. I'm actually thinking of putting the Greens last. At the state election, I put the Greens last. I'm thinking of maybe putting the Greens last again. If I get any actual Nazis or whatever in my seat, I'd probably put them last and then Greens second last. I feel like that reduces voter turnout. It actually doesn't, man, because we have like 90% voter turnout in Australia because we have compulsory voting. And people think you get fined if you don't vote or whatever. But in practice, no one ever really gets fined, and it's like $50. So we've got like compulsory preferences. We've got compulsory voting. In practice, you don't really get fined if you don't vote. But it's just by having the law there, it sort of just encourages like a culture where it's a very high rate of voter turnout. I think it's a good thing. Yeah, exactly. So local council elections are different. Council elections you can do just optional preferential. But at a federal, state level, I'm pretty sure you have to do preferences. Greens and Liberals are going last for me. State and Fed are both compulsory preferential. Yeah, I thought that. I just wanted to double check because we've got American people in the chat and I didn't want to give them any misinformation. They've lost my vote for 50 centuries for budget cutting the NBN. Yeah, no, Liberals fucked over the NBN so bad. Can you show your compass? Yeah, I'll show you my compass. This was my compass. It's pretty centrist, to be honest. Someone says, I have mates who've been fined. Look, people do get fined, but it's a relatively low-level fine. Like, it's like $50, $60. And I know a lot of people who, like, they haven't voted, and then they just say, oh, listen, I had something on that day, and then they don't get fined. So in practice, I don't think it's like draconian or anything. I think there actually is a lot of flexibility in practice because I'm pretty sure you can basically just say, listen, I had something on that day, I couldn't do it, and then you don't really get a fine. But it does sort of it does basically encourage a culture of high voter turnout, and so we basically have about 90% voter turnout in almost every election, which is probably a good thing. It probably does act to keep out more extremist candidates. Damn, about to hit 2 hours. We've got 22 people on YouTube. Thanks, guys, for watching on YouTube. Please consider liking and subscribing. I'm probably going to head soon, guys, unless anybody has some last-minute questions. I'm happy to maybe answer some last-minute questions, but I probably will be heading pretty shortly because I'm pretty tired. I actually did about 7 hours of recording today. I did a 3-hour podcast with Willie OAM. I did an hour-and-a-half podcast with David Zeng. I've done 2 hours now. So what's that? 3, 5, yeah, almost 7 hours. I'm pretty tired, to be honest. I think that our high voter turnout pushes both our major parties closer to the center. Yeah, it is true, and I think that's probably a good thing. Overall, it is a good thing because you do keep out extremist psycho people, which is good. I don't like. In Vietnam, Marxist-Leninist theory is a compulsory class, and my teacher is a hardcore Stalinist. It's fun to see him clueless when I ask them what happened to Stalin's wife. Dude, that's so funny that you're like a liberal, but you literally live in a Marxist-Leninist system. Dude, would I be correct that like the system in Vietnam, is it more kind of like hands-off than China? Because I don't know, like, are you, for example, using a VPN right now? Like, is there censorship like that? Also another question to my Vietnamese friend here. Do you reckon it'd be safe for me to go to Vietnam? Because like I actually would love to go to Vietnam and travel, but I know, like, you know, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a communist country. Do they have an extradition treaty with China? So you reckon don't go? Oh no, wait, no VPN. Oh, that's good. That's cool. I mean, that's cool that you don't need a VPN. What media sources do you read to make sure you're getting a balanced view? Look, I stick to like, I basically stick to a couple, I stick to, oh yeah, okay, it's very safe. Yeah, look, I actually really do want to go to Vietnam. I do really want to go to Vietnam. Hopefully I'll be able to go in the future. Another thing I really want to do, I want to go to Cambodia, and I found out that you can go right up to Pol Pot's grave, and I'd literally piss on it. That'd be so funny. So I really hope Drew Southeast Asia tour very soon, I hope. Hopefully. Viet Trend, I'm interested. Obviously, like, it's very hard for as one person to say this, but what's your estimation of like how many people like genuinely believe in like sort of like communism, Marxist Leninism and stuff in Vietnam? And like to what extent is it just like kind of like the governing ideology? That's interesting to me. Because look, from the outside, it definitely seems less totalitarian than China. Really, my Belarus friends were abducted by Vietnamese authorities and sent to Belarus prison. That's fucked up. That's so fucked up. Drew, why are you so cowardly? Just go traveling, you dumb. Dude, I was in the fucking front lines in Ukraine like a month and a half ago. Fuck off. Damn, that's sad though that this guy has a Belarusian friend who was abducted, sent to Belarus. Actually, Vietnamese was there last year. There's a lot of red tinge propaganda. Dude, man, this is interesting. I've actually got quite a few Vietnamese viewers. That's funny. I think I've got actually a couple. Very interesting. Very interesting. Dude, Vietnamese are fucking cool. I like Vietnamese people. I love Vietnamese food. Vietnamese Australians have done it. They're great. They integrate very well. They're great people. I'm a big fan of the Vietnamese. How'd the convo with Willie OAM go? It was actually an interesting convo. We had like a 3-hour conversation, and like we disagreed a little bit when it came to Ukraine. We disagreed on some things, but I guess in the broad outline, I mean, he does. I think the difference between us is he's like kind of John Mearsheimer realist pilled. So he's kind of like, his outlook is kind of like Ukraine's losing should therefore just stop the war straight away, even if it's bad for Ukraine. They have to give up the whole Donbass and stuff like that. Like that's where we disagree. Like I would favor a ceasefire on the current lines of position. I know it's hard because Russia wouldn't favor that. And then he was saying to me, forget the ceasefire on the current lines of position. You should actually accept that you have to give up the whole Donbass. I think that's just fucked. So I can't accept that part, right? Sometimes I feel that Vietnam is a generic dictatorship with Marxist aesthetics. Interesting. You shouldn't announce it if you travel to Southeast Asia. China has lured defectors to be there and abducted in the past. Yeah, true. It's hard. It's fucking hard, man. Like, people might laugh, but I actually do have to kind of think about like the countries I travel to. I have to kind of have to try avoid places that have extradition treaties with China and stuff. The Belarusian friend is a veteran of the war. They deported him because they're in love with the Lukashenko regime. Fuck, that's bad. That's pretty fucking bad, man. And look, I'm fine, but I do have friends who. There's actually been a couple hundred Australians who've been sanctioned by the Russian government, and I've actually got friends who've been sanctioned. I wonder, like, if they'd be at risk if they went to Vietnam. You win a Nala with the Vietnam talk. No, but dude, I genuinely like the Vietnamese. They're so cool. Like, man, the banh mi's are fucking hard. The Vietnamese bakeries are so fucking hard. The Vietnamese bakery in my house, the ladies super nice. All the Vietnamese ladies that I know are super nice. The Vietnamese people are super nice. They don't cause any trouble. They're good people. I like the Vietnamese people. They're cool people. They're cool as fuck. I've got a lot of Vietnamese friends. I bet if you traveled around Russia, you would not be detained or anything. They would not care at all who you are. Dude, that's fucking bullshit. Like, have you seen, there was a lady who was detained and sentenced to prison in Russia because she donated $50 to Ukraine. I've gone way further than that. I literally have raised money for drones for Ukraine. And this lady who gave $50 to a Ukrainian charity, she got detained, and she was from America. She got detained in Russia and sent to prison. I've literally raised money for Ukrainian drones and stuff like that. So I don't think it's safe at all. What countries would you absolutely not go in because of the yellow peril? Fuck off, this guy's an idiot. Do you think China would kidnap an Australian citizen, though? It seems like a diplomatic disaster. I mean, I think you're right. Dude, this is the thing, right? Like, I think... Okay, this is the thing, right? This is the thing. You would think that they're not retarded enough to do that. But in 2023, the Australian Federal Police, like, literally called me in and they're like, we discovered a kidnap plot against you in Australia. And they wouldn't outright say it was China, but they basically said in all but name that China was trying to kidnap you in Australia. So, like... You would think they wouldn't do it to an Australian because it would be so unbelievably retarded. But the Australian Federal Police was raiding people because of that. So it's fucking crazy. Azerbaijan is crazy for being an ally of Turkey and Israel. Hopefully they can make peace. I wouldn't go to Azerbaijan. I strongly disagree with their policies on Armenia. Either that dude is an activist, and sadly, unless he's European or American, Belarusians or Russian activists aren't safe to go there. Yeah, look, dude, that's sad. That's sad. The problem with MAGA is that virtually no one regrets their vote. I doubt they would, even if prices rise. It's loyalty to the cause. Chung Lai too. Yeah, look, they have arrested and detained Australian citizens of Chinese origin like Chung Lai. China will kidnap you in a submarine like Harold Holt. Very, very true. Absolutely true. I'm an ethnic Russian and I'm afraid to go to Russia because of my political party membership or my political history. So, dude, that's very fair. That's very fair. Because like that story of that lady from America. So I think what happened was she was Russian origin. I'm not sure if she was born in America, but she must have had family in Russia. She went back, and then they detained her, imprisoned her, basically held her as a hostage because she had donated $50 to Ukraine. And like, I've gone way harder than that. Like, I've literally donated money for the Ukrainian drones and stuff like that. So I'd be at war. I'd be worried if I ever went to Russia. I wouldn't go to Russia. I think the countries I just straight up would not go: Iran, Russia, most of the Middle East, unfortunately. I have to be pretty careful with countries that have extradition treaties with China. Bullshit. Viet Chong, he was staying low, working in a bar. He never was an activist. The only reason they took him because he fought in Ukraine for Ukraine. Fuck, that's pretty brutal. Fuck, that is pretty brutal. That's pretty brutal. You should tell Captain Dreamer to man up and come on your stream. It'll be entertainment. You know what? I would do it. I would literally debate him. So, you know what? We should actually organize that in the future. I actually agree with you. I don't know. Does anyone have any last minute questions? Because I probably am going to head, guys. It's 10:40 p.m. here. I'm a bit tired. I've been in front of the camera 7 hours today. It's been a bit much. Keen to chill. Great to see you, Drew. Thank you, MW. If you're watching on YouTube, I'd really appreciate it, guys, if you like and subscribe. Help me out. My streaming count's slowly ticking up. I've got a thing where I want to try stream every day for 100 days. I'm hoping that like by the end of the 100 days, I can try build it up. Someone goes, do you stream much? So I'm actually trying to stream every day for the next 100 days. And so I've done it 5 days in a row. And I'd really encourage people to try go to my YouTube, help me build it up, because yeah, I'm really serious about trying to build up my YouTube this year. Are you planning to watch Warfare? I do actually want to see that. That looks good. And I have to say, A24 does make some pretty good movies. Thoughts on PAP, Lee Kuan Yew from Singapore? Listen, like he did have some authoritarian aspects to him, but he's also such a fascinating figure. Lee Kuan Yew's charisma is amazing. He obviously did so much to build up Singapore. So I think he's an admirable and fascinating figure. And I hope to one day go to Singapore. I mean, I've transited through the airport and stuff, but I hope I can one day like stay in Singapore properly. And when I do, I really want to go to the museum and look. I find Lee Kuan Yew a really fascinating figure, and I bought his books and everything. Thanks, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. Do you always stream around this time? Look, I streamed at nighttime Australia time today just because in the morning I had a podcast and stuff. I'm going to try do in the morning tomorrow. So that'll be more like American. I'm going to try and shift my streaming time so that I stream when it's nighttime in America because honestly, a large part of my following these days is actually American. So I might do more streaming in the morning in Australia time. And it actually works for me because then I'd have the afternoon free to like, do writing and other YouTube videos and stuff. I think it's too complex. I think it's, look, we'll easy money. Let's go into this in the next stream because I do have to go soon. I mean, you could on the face of it say Lee Kuan Yew goes against the values of liberalism. But at the same time, I mean, I think it's not so simple to just say he's fully against liberalism because he did build up a pretty amazing functional system in Singapore. Hang on. Man, I can't be fucked to get up early. I don't know. Listen, what do you guys reckon? Should I stream nighttime Australian time, which is like morning American time, or should I stream morning Australian time, which is nighttime American time? I don't know, because like honestly, a lot of my following these days is American. It's a tough one. Morning Australia time. I actually would prefer. It's hard, right? Because I actually probably would personally prefer morning Australia time because it just means that I have like the rest of the day free to do other stuff. Because like alongside live streaming, I really want to try to do stuff like I want to write a lot more Substacks. I want to try and make at least like one proper good YouTube video a week alongside the streaming and stuff like that. So I've been working pretty hard, but yeah. Some people say night Australia time. Does Drew have Fed connections? It'd be based if I did have Fed correct connections, but instead I've got no Fed connections, and the Australian government doesn't even care when China tries to kidnap me in Australia, basically. All right, guys. All right, I'm pretty tired. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. 5 a.m. to 10 a.m. is best for Americans. I might look into like doing it American time. Yeah, dude, look, that's an interesting one. Viet Tran, I'd actually be really interested. It'd be cool if you wanted to join the stream. That said, though, I wouldn't want to get you in trouble because, look, I know that there's still, like, probably some restrictions on freedom of speech and stuff like that. I wouldn't want to get you in trouble. I'd love to have a Vietnamese guy on the stream, but, yeah, I just don't want to get anyone in trouble. So let me know. It'd be cool. But only if I can make sure that you guys stay safe. Maybe if you can remain anonymous, it'd be cool. But, yeah. Thank you so much, everyone who's been tuning in. This is the 5th day of streaming in a row. We've seen my streaming count slowly ticking upwards. I think when I started, I was getting like maybe 10 to 15 live viewers kind of thing. And I'm now getting like getting almost around 25, 30. So it is growing. I appreciate everyone tuning in. If you guys can help share my YouTube channel, it'd be a big help to me. I'll try hopefully see you guys tomorrow. Hopefully tomorrow we'll do it again. I'll try probably morning Australia time, which is nighttime American time. Anyway, guys, thank you so much. God bless you all on this beautiful Good Friday, Easter. Even if you're not Christian, God bless you all. Thanks for tuning in. I really appreciate it. The Drew Pavlu live streaming career, it's very much in its infancy stages, but it's gonna go up. Someone goes, let me plan things out. Love, I'm not that safe. Yeah, dude. I just want you to be safe at the end of the day. I don't want to interview anyone from a country that could get themselves in trouble for speaking on a live stream. I'd love to talk to them, but I don't want them to get in trouble. Drew's still a Tory. I wouldn't even describe myself as a Tory, guys, but I actually would describe myself as a liberal progressive. But I'm against the excesses of wokeness. Anyway. Oh, yeah, A person. Yeah, thank you, man. I want to give a big shout out to this A person guy who like literally voted for me at the last election when I was 21 years old. I really appreciate the fact that there are still some people who are watching me who have been following along since like 2019. That's really fucking cool because we've even got Malaysians. Dude, this is interesting. I wonder why I've got so many people from Southeast Asia. That's cool. Maybe it's because of the time zones. That's cool. Thank you, guys. I love Malaysian food. I really want to go to Malaysia. I love nasi lemak. I love Malaysian food. It's one of my favorite types of food. Malaysia's cool. I'm day one too. I watched you get punched. Damn, man. Thank you so much. That's so cool. Guys, I got to say, to the day ones, I really appreciate you guys. That's so cool. That's so fucking cool, the day ones. Because it's funny, like, I guess really over the last year, my Twitter grew up a lot over the past year. And so I've got a lot of like new people watching my stuff and everything. But like for the people who were there from 2019, that's fucking so cool. So I really appreciate you guys. MW, that's so cool. And same with A Person. And I want to also shout out the guys from other countries who are watching. That's really cool. Malaysia, Vietnam. It's fucking awesome. Thank you so much, guys. It's awesome. And yeah. Oh, we've even got a Chinese guy. That's fucking cool. That's fucking cool, man. I'm really happy that fuck off, Swindon. Fuck off. This guy's like a full Nazi. What he's talking about is like the Nazis in Brisbane pretended to endorse me to troll me and get the left to attack me, even though I hated them. Just so bullshit. Solidarity. Thank you, MW. You're a legend, man. Drew's 100% all about the money. He does not really have any morals. That's bullshit, man. Like, I'm literally doing all this for free. That said, that's a good point, actually. If you guys have been watching my stuff and like my stuff, if you're like a day one, if you guys are interested, you could potentially subscribe to my Patreon. It'd be a huge help because I'm really trying my hardest right now to make this into my full-time gig. My dream is to be able to make it as a writer, YouTuber, make it as a public commentator. So if you guys want to subscribe, I'd really appreciate my Patreon. Anyway, yeah, thank you guys. God bless you all. Thanks so much for tuning in. Really appreciate it. Thank you guys. I'll see you tomorrow. God bless you all.